finally reached a safe place, surrounded by officers, I was able to cry, to let it out, to attempt to process it. These extremist groups were emboldened because President Trump told them repeatedly that their insurrectionist activities were the pinnacle of patriotism. Well, let today be the day that we reclaim the definition of patriotism. Impeachment is not to punish, but to prevent. We are not here to punish Donald Trump. We are here to prevent the seeds of hatred that he planted from bearing any more fruit. As my colleagues showed, this was not the first time that President Trump inspired violence, but it must be the last time that he's given a platform to do so. This must be our wake-up call. We must condemn it because the threat is not over. President Trump refused to condemn this type of violence. Instead, over and over again, he's encouraged it. Our response must be different this time. We simply cannot sweep this under the rug. We must take a united stand, all of us, that this is not American. Think back to August 2017, when a young woman was murdered during a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, West Virginia. Her name was Heather Heyer. Her mother's name is Susan Breaux. Ms. Breaux has been a steadfast advocate for her daughter's memory. In a 2018 interview, she expressed concern that people had rushed too quickly to reconciliation without accountability.
If you rush to heal, if you rush to everybody grab each other and sing Kumbaya, then we've accomplished nothing and we'll be right back here in a few years.
We will be right back here in a few years. Those were her words in 2018, 3 years ago. Her daughter's murderer, he was held to account. But our nation did not impose any meaningful accountability on a president who at the time said that there were very fine people on both sides. And now where are we 3 years later? I'd argue we're not just back where we were. I would argue things are worse. In 2017, it was unfathomable to most of us to think that Charlottesville could happen, just as it was unfathomable to most of us that the Capitol could have been breached on January 6th. Frankly, what unfathomable horrors await us if we do not stand up now and say, no, this is not America. And we will not just express condolences and denunciations. We won't just close the book and try to move on. We will act to make sure this never happens again.
What's up, everyone? Please take a second to hit that like button. Let's rack them likes up and try and fill the chat. I don't know what's going on. CommieTube keeps shutting me down. I don't know why. Well, I guess I know why. It's because of the things I say. It's got to be. I don't know why else they would shut it down. Other people are live streaming this. I think it's from things I said yesterday. I was actually writing them in a live chat during the last live, and they're like, oh, well, that's strange. We'll look into that. And I was writing them about taking me down. And then as soon as I ended the live chat, they took me down again. They're on some stupid stuff. I noticed I was shadow banned pretty much for the whole last live stream. We got to keep them likes up. I don't know if people are trying to report my account or if it's just CommieTube coming straight after me, but they're on some BS. I apologize that this is happening. It's not like I want to keep going up and down on these lives. I'd rather just run it out so we can see these lies that these people are telling. I don't know. It's something messed up. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me through all this stupid nonsense. It happens. They do it from time to time. This is not the first time they've done this to me. I appreciate you guys going through the hurdles with me.
It was one of the bloodiest intrusions in the Capitol since the British invaded in the War of 1812 and burned it to the ground. And you've heard in painstaking detail that the president's mob posed an immediate and serious threat to the continuity and constitutional succession of the United States government. As the first, second, and third in line to the presidency, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tem, were all together and faced a common threat in the same location. And we've seen the first and the second were purposely targeted by these attackers. These weren't idle threats. The mob, as you have heard, chanted, "Hang Mike Pence."
Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence!
The charging documents show that the rioters said they would have killed Vice President Pence and Speaker Pelosi had they found them. Dawn Bancroft and Diane Santos Smith, two of the rioters charged in the attack, were caught on tape discussing the brutal violence that they hoped to inflict on Speaker Pelosi had she not been rushed out to safety. They said, quote, "We broke into the Capitol. We got inside. We did our part. We were looking for Nancy to shoot her in the frigging brain, but we didn't find her," end quote. Senators, simply put, this mob was trying to overthrow our government. And they came perilously close to reaching the first three people in line to the presidency. It wasn't just the vice president and the speaker. Rioters were prepared to attack any member of Congress they found. Thomas Edward Caldwell, Donovan Ray Kroll, and Jessica Marie Watkins, three militia members, were also charged for their role in the attack. They discussed trapping us inside the underground tunnels. The indictment quotes social media chatter with Caldwell, quote, "All members are in the tunnel under Capitol. Seal them in. Turn on gas. All legislators are down in the tunnels, 3 floors down. Do like we had to do when I was in the Corps and start tearing out floors. Go from top to bottom," end quote. Never did any of us imagine that we or our colleagues would face mortal peril by a mob riled up by the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. But we did. All because Donald Trump could not accept his election defeat. Trump chose himself above the people, above our institutions, above our democracy, above all of you. You know, we've heard Trump espouse for years now this America First policy. But his true North Star isn't America's well-being. It's not country first like our dear departed colleague John McCain. No, his directive is Trump first, no matter the cost, no matter the threat to our democracy. But each and every one of us in this room must agree on one thing. We can never allow the kind of violent attack that occurred on January 6th to ever happen again in this country. In the immediate aftermath, we heard really disturbing accounts from many members of Congress about what they experienced that day. Here are some of those reactions. Following the attack, Representative Dusty Johnson expressed concerns that we had gotten to the point where so many of us had sown the seeds of anger and division.
We were barricaded, and there was some fear, to be sure, but overwhelmingly the emotion that I experienced was one of anger. I just could not believe that this was happening. I could not believe that we had gotten to this point where so many of us had sown these seeds of anger and of division, and we had built this powder keg, and really we were starting to see this powder keg light up, and it was, frankly, I was furious.
Representative Jason Crow compared the events of this day to his time in Afghanistan as an Army Ranger, something Senator Reid knows something about.
What I felt in the Capitol behind us is something that I haven't felt since I was in Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. And to think that as a member of Congress in 2021, in the U.S. Capitol on the House floor, that I was preparing to fight my way out of the People's House against a mob is just beyond troubling.
Representative Pat Fallon was humbled by his experience on January 6th and described the events as surreal as they unfolded here in the Capitol.
It was something that I just never thought I'd see this in our nation's capital, and particularly in the House chamber. It was surreal when it was unfolding. Well, you know, what was interesting was the bravery and the courage of some of my fellow members. When we got to a point where the mob was banging on the doors, and all that kept them from reaching the chamber itself was the doors and then some furniture that we had moved and some Capitol Police, and they needed to be augmented. And so Tony Gonzalez, a new freshman rep from Texas, and Ronnie Jackson and Troy Nels and Mark Wayne Mullen stepped in, and we broke off furniture. Some of the hand sanitizer stations are on these big giant poles, wooden poles, and we turned them upside down, and we were ready to actually have the street fight in the House chamber. It was unbelievable.
Many members that day wondered if they would ever see their families again. As the rioters reached the Capitol and they were outnumbered and trapped inside, they were calling loved ones to say goodbye. Representative Dan Kildee was one of them. Listen to how he described the impact of the riot on him.
I was laying on the floor, trying to, protect myself behind this little wall, and we all took our pins off because we're certain that if this mob were to come in, that would not be a good thing for them to quickly, easily be able to identify us as members of Congress. I called my wife, and it wasn't until I heard her voice that I thought, wow, this is like one of those calls you hear about.
While most coverage is focused on the extreme danger posed to members and the Capitol Police who were targets of this attack, there were lots of other people in the Capitol working on January 6th as well. From personal aides to floor employees, cleaning staff, food service workers. We can't forget all the people that were in harm's way that day. These employees experienced trauma, some cowered, hiding in places just feet away from where this rabid crowd had assembled. Many were just kids, 20-somethings, who came here to work because they believed in their country and they believed in working to make it better. Others were dedicated food and service workers, all who work incredibly hard to make sure that we can come here and do our jobs. These workers are the lifeblood of the legislative branch. They deserved better. You've already heard from Speaker Pelosi's staff, the staff that was hiding under the conference table, cowering in the dark, making sure that the attackers couldn't hear them. But I'd like to share with you what some other staffers went through. Listen as two staffers recall what they experienced that day.
But then we were seeing on Twitter, on our phones, and then and hearing from some of the police officers on the floor that the building had been breached. Building breached, those were two words I had never heard.
That was particularly stressful, being in a room close to where things are happening and not really knowing what was happening, and seeing it come in live and getting texts from people, are you okay? And truthfully, I didn't know what was happening. I heard shots fired, shots fired, shots fired, show me your hands, show me your hands. Then I did not know if they were right outside, if they were lots of people.
I can't show the pew-pew sticks.
One shooter, if they had, I didn't know what it looked like. I just knew that there were shots fired outside of the House chamber.
According to reports, one Republican Senate staffer whose office was not far from the floor, quote, took a steel rod and barricaded his door as the rioters banged on his door trying to break in. The New York Times also reported that a senior black staffer was under lockdown for 6 hours during the insurrection, was so disturbed about these events that she quit her job. Another staffer who was on the floor of the House that day described what happened on January 6th still echoes in his mind. Listen to him describe the moments just before this indelible image.
I heard glass break, and I could see the window panes on the house main door start to pop. And I figured that, obviously I knew they were at the door, and they figured out a way to break the glass. And the last thing I remember before I walked off the floor was several of the police officers had drawn their guns and had their guns trained on the door. Clearly that was, I didn't think there was anything else I could do, and I didn't want to be there for whatever was about to occur. So I got to the top of the stairs. The stairway was pretty packed, and right about that point, I don't know whether it was a police officer or somebody else said, "They're right behind us, run." For me, the thing that I keep thinking about, and again, there isn't a day that hasn't gone by since January 6th that at some point in the day I haven't kind of gone back and picked at some little thing, but the sound of those window panes popping, I won't forget that sound.
I won't forget that sound. How long will the sound of window panes breaking haunt this staffer? And he isn't alone. There are countless people who are still living with the trauma of what happened that day. This includes, by the way, another group of people who were with us in the Capitol on that day, and that's the press. They were in danger, particularly after years of being derided by President Trump as fake news. Kristen Wilson, a reporter for CNN, recently tweeted about her experience. She said, "I have 14 people on my team. We were scattered everywhere. 2 of them were on crutches and couldn't have run if they had to. They had to anyway. 1 was trapped in the House chamber and had to crawl out to hide. 4 of us barricaded ourselves in a room off the Senate chamber. Every bang on the door of them trying to come through, I can still hear in my head." The janitorial and custodial staff of the Capitol, the people who day after day tend to our home away from home, were also traumatized. But we don't talk about them and the harm they suffered often enough. One janitorial worker recounted how he was so scared that he had to hide in a closet during the attack. He said, quote, "I was all by myself. I didn't know what was going on," end quote. Another employee, a mother of 3, said, "The insurrection shattered all my sense of security at work." And an employee of the Capitol said, quote, "I hope nothing else happens, because these people were talking about killing us, killing federal employees, killing police." Another employee was afraid to work on Inauguration Day, said, quote, "I honestly fear for my life. I've got 2 children at home," end quote. For many of the black and brown staff, the trauma was made worse by the many painful symbols of hate that were on full display that day. Insurrectionists waved Confederate flags and hurled the most disgusting racial slurs at dedicated Capitol workers. Then after all of that, these same workers, many of them people of color, were forced to clean up the mess left by mobs of white nationalists. One member of the janitorial staff reflected how terrible he felt when he had to clean up feces that had been smeared on the wall, blood of a rioter who had died, and broken glass and other objects strewn all over the floor. He said, "I felt bad. I felt degraded." Let's also not forget that this violent attack happened in the middle of a global pandemic. Social distancing was impossible as we were hiding for our lives in cramped quarters for long periods of time. Since January 6th, at least 7 members who hid with other members of Congress have tested positive for COVID-19. At least 38 Capitol Police officers have either tested positive or been exposed, and nearly 200 National Guard troops who were deployed to our nation's capital to provide all of us protection have tested positive. The Capitol Police and the National Guard came here to keep us safe, to serve, and they put their lives in danger. They deserved better than this. We all did. That brings me to the next harm. Now, all of us in this room made it out alive, but not everyone was so lucky. 3 law enforcement officers tragically lost their lives as a result of the riot on January 6th. These officers, Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, Capitol Police Officer Howard Liebengood, and Metropolitan Police Officer Jeffrey Smith, all honorably served to protect and defend. My colleague, Mr. Swalwell, told you about Officer Sicknick. He was a 42-year-old military veteran who dedicated his entire life to public service. On January 6th, he fought a mob of rioters as they streamed into the Capitol and ultimately lost his life protecting us. Officer Liebengood was a 15-year veteran of the Capitol Police. His father served as Sergeant-at-Arms here in the Senate, and Officer Liebengood followed his extraordinary example of public service. Officer Smith served for 12 years with the Metropolitan Police Department. He heeded the call of duty on January 6th by coming to stand with the Capitol Police to help secure our democracy. Earlier, my colleague, Manager Swalwell, showed you terrible videos of the police being physically abused and injured. You remember what happened to Officer Fanone and Officer Hodges of the MPD, but there were scores of other officers whose names we don't know who were also brutalized that day. Injuries to the U.S. Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department include concussions, irritated lungs, serious injuries caused by repeated blows from bats, poles, and clubs. Capitol Police officers also sustained injuries that will be with them for the rest of their lives.
They don't know the names of the officers, but they found the names of insurgents that were fully covered. You couldn't hardly even tell what skin color they were, let alone their face or anything. How does that work?
Attack, who have sustained brain injuries. One officer has 2 cracked ribs and 2 smashed spinal discs. One officer is going to lose his eye, and another was stabbed with a metal fence stake, end quote. In total, at least 81 members of Capitol Police and 65 members of the Metropolitan Police Department were injured during the attack on January 6th. Former Capitol Police Chief's son described the insurrection as violent, unlike anything he'd seen in his 30-year career in law enforcement. D.C. Police Chief Robert J. Conti III, who had spoken with an officer who had been beaten and injured with a stun gun, said, quote, "I've talked to officers who have done 2 tours in Iraq who said this was scarier to them than their time in combat," end quote. Of course, the physical violence is not the only thing that will have a lasting effect on our brave sworn officers. Trump's mob verbally denigrated their patriotism, questioned their loyalty, and yelled racial slurs. They called them traitors, Nazis, un-American for protecting us. For example, in the next clip, a rioter wearing a hunting jacket accosts a police officer.
Are you an American? Act like something like you know. Don't get that out with the fuck. Get him for an eye. You guys got no idea what the fuck now. Now once again, that's for America. Now one idea. Don't touch me, don't. Get the fuck out of here. Don't touch me, motherfucker. Easy, man. Take it easy. No, they work for us. Fuck them.
Listen to how the Trump mob talked to these officers. You heard that with your own ears.
Fuck you! You're a fucking traitor! You come here, motherfucker! What's going on? You're a fucking traitor to your country! Yeah! You're a fucking traitor! Fucking traitor!
Effing traitor. So much for back in the blue. There's a couple more examples.
And the president had also tweeted out to respect and, be peaceful to the officers at the Capitol because they're on America's side. So, like, everything they're saying right here, they had already proved. This has nothing to do with the president, like, at all. They proved it themselves yesterday. Stupid. So stupid. And if they're smearing feces and shots are fired and oh my God, they were so scared for their life, and there was people everywhere, and they were making death threats and this, that, and the. How did any of them survive? How did they survive this just totally crippling attack that happened? Just, there I am using my brain again, dang it.
Enforcement officers, traitors. You have to wonder, who are these rioters sworn to? To whom do they believe the police owe their loyalty? To the people? To the Constitution? To our democracy? Or to Donald Trump? Even those who were not outwardly injured, the mental toll has been significant. Several Capitol Police officers have reportedly threatened self-harm in the days following the riot. And in one case, an officer voluntarily turned in her gun because she was afraid of what might happen. Black police officers were also met with racist vitriol. You heard lead manager Raskin reference a black police officer who, weary from racialized violence that he had experienced that day, saying, "Tears just started streaming down my face. I said, what the F, man? Is this America?" Is this America, lead manager Raskin asked. Is this America? What is your answer to that question? Is this okay? If not, what are we going to do about it? These people matter. These people who risk their lives for us. So I ask you respectfully to consider them, the police officers, the staff of this building, when you cast your vote. These people are in deep pain because they showed up here to serve the American people, to serve their government, to serve all of us. And I ask each of you, when you cast your vote, to remember them and honor them and act in service of them as they deserve. I also want to recognize that 4 individuals, 4 insurrectionists, who also lost their lives during the attack. These people were led here by the words and actions of an individual who made them believe that they were patriots. The loss of human life is, of course, the most consequential. But that was not the only damage wrought that day. The Trump mob also damaged this building.
Aw, dang, I think my merch just got here.
Places, the Statuary Hall, the Rotunda, where some of America's greatest champions, presidents, Supreme Court justices, civil rights heroes, and other defenders are honored after their death. Trump's violent mob had little respect for this place. This video shows the wreckage left in the Senate parliamentarian's office by the insurrectionists.
Thank you so much, Ten Mohave, Lori again, and RC Fuss for your donations and all your support. And thank you, YouTube Videos 2021, for joining the membership program, and welcome to the family. You're officially a hooligan.
An empty picture frame, presumably robbed of its contents, was found on the floor, and videos of the insurrection captured one man stealing a framed photo, another one tearing a scroll from the wall and ripping it up and throwing those pieces on the floor. A sign paying tribute to John Lewis was also shamefully destroyed, and only a broken piece of the memorial was found on the ground next to a trash can. The photo of Mr. Lewis was gone. The damage done to this building is a stain on all of us and on the dignity of our democracy. The attack we saw had a purpose: stop the certification, stop our democratic process. Fortunately, they did not prevail. Newspapers across America on January 21st, the day after the inauguration, proclaimed democracy has prevailed. President Biden said that in his inauguration speech. The headline was in so many places because the world's oldest constitutional democracy and the principles underlying it had been attacked and challenged. This wasn't just an attack on the Capitol building and the dedicated people inside. It was an attack on what we were elected to preserve, our democracy. This attack on our elections, on the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next, didn't even happen during the Civil War. But it did just happen because of the cold, calculated, and conspiratorial acts of our former president, Donald J. Trump. We showed you that the insurrectionists were deliberate, that they came looking for Vice President Pence and Speaker Pelosi, ready to kill. When President Trump incited a lawless mob to attack our process, he was attacking our democracy. He was trying to become king and rule over us against the will of the people and the valid results of the election. For the first time ever in our history, a sitting president actively instigated his supporters to violently disrupt the process that provides for the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next. Think about that for a moment. What if President Trump had been successful? What if he had succeeded in overturning the will of the people in our constitutional processes? Who among us is willing to risk that outcome by letting Trump's constitutional crimes go unanswered? The founders included impeachment in our Constitution not as a punishment, but to prevent. We have to prevent every president, today, tomorrow, or at any time in the future, from believing that this conduct is acceptable. Today, we have to stand up for our democracy and ensure we remain a country governed by the people, for the people, by telling Donald Trump and people all across this country and all across the world that his crimes will not and cannot stand.
Okay, so all these people are so bloodthirsty, right? Thousands of them stormed the Capitol, bloodthirsty. How many of them were charged with murder? Or assault, felonious assault with intent to cause great bodily harm or death? Because as far as I know, ain't none of them been charged with that. Well, are we going to do a recess?
Without objection. Without objection, the Senate will stand in recess.
They should let that guy retire. Just put him in the home. You don't even know where he's at. These people are crazy. And they're just repeating themselves. They're totally repeating themselves. Like saying the officer talking about being called racist names and yada yada. They said that yesterday. And they're using articles of news as facts, like factual evidence. And like I say all the time on here, to read a news article or to even see a clip that's not live, you're getting someone else's perception. Like, for me to explain to you what happened on the 6th without showing you the live clip, you'd be getting my perspective, my opinion of it. No matter how accurate I'm trying to describe the situation, you're still getting it through my eyes, which may not be the same way you would interpret it if you were there. That's what's wrong with all of this stuff. And they're at the point where they're repeating themselves. Now, today's supposed to be the last day. When does the defense get to speak? Like, do they get to speak, or are they just visitors? Do they just get to sit there and watch these fools lie? And that's the first time I heard them say anything about smearing fecal matter on the walls. I hadn't heard that yet. I heard they were armed. I like how they were talking about shots fired earlier. I hadn't heard that yet either. That must be more unreleased footage and unreleased audio that's happened. That stuff makes no sense. That stuff makes no sense. And they've painted this picture like it's a war zone and, you know, just bloodthirsty maniacs coming through the windows like the SWAT team. They were there to kill everybody. Nobody's being charged with murder. Nobody's being charged with felonious assault with intent to cause great bodily harm or death. Liars. These fools are liars, but I don't know who they think they're lying to. I don't know if they're just trying to lie to the other people in the room or if they think that we believe that stuff. They see how many people's there. Like, there was so many people there, and there were so many people live streaming while they were there. Who do they think they're lying to? Most of us sat here and watched it all day. And then they keep bringing it, oh, it was just as scary as 9/11. Oh, the troops in Iraq say it was scarier than being in Iraq to be at the Capitol. Whatever. I'm sure it was not. I am quite sure it was not scarier than being in Iraq and being shot at in a third world country. There's no way it was worse than 9/11. Like, are you guys smoking crack over there? Like, how can you even compare it to 9/11? This terrible. That's terrible to even say that. These people are ridiculous, and they paint this picture like it was so scary, and these bloodthirsty maniacs were hunting us down. How did any of you survive? How did any of you survive? They act like sitting in the room is what kept them safe. If you go to Clapper, which is like, I don't know, it's like the parlor version of TikTok. I have a Clapper account, and I have a video of the the guy with the goat head or whatever, and they're walking in those rooms and they're just hanging out. The police is hanging out. The police is like, hey guys, you should probably go. You got to go. There's a couple insurrectionists or whatever you want to call them. They're like, make phone calls. They're like, hey, what's up, dude? What's up, Patriot? Like, just hanging out. Not a big deal. It didn't look scary to me, say for like 16 or 18 hours. I mean, it was wild. What was happening was wild, but I didn't see people scared. Them cops didn't look scared. They got inside the Capitol. They didn't even know what to do. They were just standing around. They were like, hey, we made it. It's pretty cool. How much property damage was caused? Because they don't talk about that. There's like statues and paintings, and I'm sure it's priceless. I don't want to say artifacts, but things inside the Capitol, right? Like these bloodthirsty maniacs, were they ripping paintings off the wall? Were they burning the building down? Were they destroying stuff? Like, yeah, they broke windows. They were attempting to enter doors, to breach doorways. Did they destroy anything? Because we watch Antifa destroy stuff all the time. And they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that at all. And then they keep blaming the president for stuff that doesn't even matter. Like talking about Michigan. The people here in Michigan storming the Capitol. That had nothing to do with the president. They put us in lockdown. We never came out of lockdown. Just last week, I think it was last Monday, they let restaurants open up to 25%. And that's like the first time they've been open since March. That's why people were at the Capitol. It was an anti-lockdown rally that had nothing to do with the president. And now they're blaming the president for that. It's so stupid. They're blaming the president for, and it was 6 guys, and now it's like 13 guys who had supposedly planned to kidnap the governor. There's a lot of mixed information on that. Some say that, this has been gathered from messages on Messenger, that these guys were talking to each other like on a fishing trip through Messenger, and Messenger turned it into the FBI. And so these guys got picked up. But then there's information saying they were actually training for it. Out of all the information that's come out, never have I heard that they planned on assassinating her. And now they're blaming that on them, like on the president. That does not make sense. You're like quoting the news. You're using like last night. They tried to they tried to basically say that, I don't know if it was a senator or what it was, that elected official had either been a part of something or said something that was not true. He stood up at the very end of yesterday, and I'm sure, some of you were there watching with me yesterday. At the very end of it, he stood up and he's like, I want that wiped from the record because it is not true. The chairman or whatever, the guy at the top in his big chair, he didn't even know what to do. He didn't even know how to respond. Everybody around him had to help tell him what to say and what to do and how to act and what? And then they couldn't decide whether or not to wipe it off the record. And the guy's like, you're saying this about me. I'm here telling you I never said that. I never did that. And you're lying. They had to take a vote. They were like trying to take a vote. Do we keep this on the record or do we take it off? Should we keep the false information on the record or not? I'm not really sure. What the hell? What the hell? That's why this never went to court. That's like the defense was saying, not yesterday, but the day before. They were like, well, you know, he should be charged. He should actually deal with court and then come here and be impeached. No, they don't want that. You're supposed to tell the truth in court. These guys are not good at that. And now they're at the point where they're just repeating themselves. They're providing the same video, saying the same things over and over again. I'm sitting here with my finger on the button waiting for them to show that one girl who got shot by the DC police or whatever it was, the Capitol Police. They've showed that twice now. I'm going to see if today's going to be the third time they show it. Like, why are you just showing this over and over again? You're not proving anything different at all. So how come the defense doesn't get to speak? If today's the last day, we're 2 hours and 20 minutes into the 8-hour period of our final day, why does the defense not get to speak yet? They don't get 8 hours? They just, they're going to get the crumbs? They're going to be like, all right, boys, you got 30 minutes. Wrap this up. Like, I don't even want to bring up fairness, because we all know they don't care about what's fair. They don't care about what's right and wrong. They just care about their agenda. Stupid. It is so stupid. And I really cannot wait to hear what the defense has, because I look at it like it could happen two ways. Now, this is just my opinion, you know. Just like all of you, you have the right to your opinion. This is my opinion. I think that, you know, the defense, of course, could stand up and prove everything they're saying is wrong, is false. But we already know it's false. What I think they should do is they should compare it to all of those standing there in the room. If Trump is inciting violence, maybe they should talk about AOC and inciting violence. Maybe they should talk about some of these other people who have said similar things, if not worse things, and show clips of them. You know, show news articles of them. They should put clips of Alex Jones up and say, well, these are facts. These right here, what Alex Jones said, and these are facts. Why not? Those idiots are over there, you know, like, oh, the Washington Post says this. Who cares what the Washington Post says? That's their opinion. That's their perception of things. I think that the defense should go out there and throw all those people under the bus. Don't worry about defending the president. Everybody knows what they're saying about the president and all the nonsense around it. Everyone knows that's not true. I think if they shine more spotlight on the people standing there in the room and how the actual path that led everyone to being so angry and so upset, to actually make the decision to go to the Capitol or tweet or post or speak on their feelings, how they feel, I think that maybe they would be without tactic to fight back, because they're just so focused on Trump that I think it would catch them off guard to have all of them exposed, to have all the video and audio of them being exposed, the people in the room, the people who are actually messing everything up because of their lies and their corruption. I think if they were exposed and they had the spotlight on them, I don't think people would be worried about what happened to the president and what he said or did or tweeted or whatever. You see what they did to Parler? I do not see Parler coming back. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Parler's just trying to get another server. Amazon owns like 30% of the online realty of hosting. Like before Amazon was like eBay, because to me it's like eBay. It's just an online shop. What a lot of people don't know is Amazon has servers and stuff that host websites. Most of the websites that we use here in America are actually hosted by Amazon. That's why Amazon's worth so much money. It's not because of their online store. It's because they're a website hosting platform who used to host Parler. But because Parler wouldn't start censoring people, you see how they talk about Parler? They said, extremist social media website. And that's what they said. But if you read the caption they had up there, they were talking about Parler. And Parler doesn't exist because Parler wouldn't get on board with their stuff. Now a lot of people are like, oh, they just have to get another server and they'll be back up. What do you think's going to happen to the server that supports them? The government is against Parler. Anybody that supports Parler, as far as giving them a leg to stand on, they're going to be taken down too. That's what's going to happen. That's why you don't see Parler. That's why they're not back. I'm waiting for Clapper to get taken down. And like I mentioned while they were speaking, they don't know the officers that were severely injured, but they were able to figure out the name and location of insurrectionists that were completely covered. Masks, glasses, helmets, hats, vests, long sleeve shirts, gloves, pants, boots. Like they showed that person yesterday. You could not tell who that was. No, like there's no way. He looked like a National Guardsman. He looked like a fully dressed up cop. There's no way to tell who that was. They know his full name. They knew his address. They went and picked him up. But you guys don't know the officers that were at the Capitol who work there? What? That doesn't make any sense. And I don't know if you guys know, but when they took Parler down, they took all of the information from Parler to track down the people at the Capitol. The FBI used the information from Parler in order to go and arrest those people. And I wonder how many of you actually know that. Facebook Messenger did the same thing. Anybody that said anything about the Capitol through Messenger, Facebook forfeited the whole conversation, like the whole person's profile, for anybody and everybody that said anything about the Capitol on the 6th. That all got forfeited to the FBI as well. And they're like openly admitting it. They're just, these articles have been released. The information is out there. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. They work really hard to try and prove the president did something that I don't believe he did. But they don't, they don't actually work hard in any kind of form to do what's right. And I've seen people say, well, if they would just do the right thing, we wouldn't have to go through all of this. But they're trying to get full control. They want top power. They want to control the whole country. It's not about what people think and say and feel. It's about them getting what they want. You see how hard they're fighting to prove this? And no one believes it. Go to any Walter live stream and read those comments. Because you know what it was like back in the summertime. We'd be at like a pro-Trump rally, or we'd be looking at a hearing or something here on the live, and the comments were so polluted. We'd have trolls showing up, saying this, that, and that stuff I can't even say because they'll get my channel deleted. But you know what I mean. It was so toxic. You could not watch anything that had to do with the president without it getting so toxic. Go to a Walter live stream right now. You will not see one person defending him. Nobody supports Walter. The only people that voted for him were anti-Trumpers, not Walter supporters. You still don't see, like where was all the Walter supporters or even anti-Trumpers at the Capitol? How come they weren't there? How come the FBI released a press briefing 2 days or maybe the day after what happened at the Capitol, saying they knew for weeks that they are a part of Facebook groups and messaging boards, and they're on Reddit, and they're a part of everything to be able to receive information. So they said they knew for weeks that people were planning on doing this. I mean, they just showed clips saying that on the extremist social media website, people were stating that they couldn't wait to show up at the rally, that they had full intentions of being destructive, violent, and causing harm. Well, then why'd you let it happen? If the FBI knew, why'd they let it happen? They knew for weeks in advance. Well, then why'd you let it happen? And, well, maybe they could argue, well, we had riot police there, and they were overwhelmed. If you knew thousands and thousands and thousands of people were going to show up, then why wouldn't you have the National Guard there? If you thought it was that big of a deal, how come nobody called in reinforcements? Why did you have so many riot police who basically were armed with a plastic shield and mace? If it was so bad, out there smearing fecal matter on the wall, shots fired, the Capitol's been breached, oh my, oh me, oh my. It's because you wanted it to happen. You wanted it to look that way. You wanted to demonize those people. Because look at the way it is now. When was the last time you seen a flag wave? It's been a long time. I try to cover all lives that, have to do with Americans doing American stuff. I ain't seen a flag wave in a while. You haven't seen anybody out there rocking bars and stars. You can't. You got an American flag on you, people just assume you're a Trumper, a pro-Trumper. Even now that he's not in office, they've demonized bars and stars. That's ridiculous. And they don't understand why people are saying they're un-American or they're anti-American. They demonize the flag. Like, they demonize our rights. They're like, oh, they said this. They have the right to say that. You don't have the right to threaten people. I don't necessarily know about racism. I guess it depends on how it's said. But to simply say, I feel this way, or I think this, you have the right to that. Here they are in the Senate demonizing it. Look at you terrible people saying things, thinking. That's awful. I mean, they're saying it right to us. They want control. They are literally saying they're mad at the president for not telling Americans what to do. Oh, the president didn't tell them to do this. The president didn't tell them to do that. He wanted to be king. Well, a king would tell people what to do. A king would say, you will do this or else. They're trying to say that he wanted to be king while using the fact that he didn't mandate people to do one thing or another in the same phrasing. I don't think they know what they want, and I don't think they know who they're lying to. Yeah, there's a lot of idiots out there. There's probably a lot of dumb people who believe what's being said. Not us. We've been watching this stuff daily. I don't know who they're lying to. They must just be doing this for the Washington Post, for CNN, to go out there and write their little articles so idiots on Facebook can believe it and repeat it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Antifa now say, yeah, those terrible people at the Capitol, what they did was worse than 9/11. You know why they say that? Is because there isn't hardly, I haven't seen anybody in Antifa that's older than 25. So if you think about when 9/11 happened, they would have been like 5 or 6 years old. Of course, when you're 5 or 6 years old, you have no idea what happened at 9/11. You have no comprehension of how bad it actually was at 9/11. So, of course, when a meme on Facebook or a 20-second clip from a news, from Washington Post or one of those kind of news sites says, oh yeah, what happened at the Capitol was worse than 9/11. Here these Antifa special individuals out here repeating it, telling everybody, oh, did you know? Did you know it was worse than 9/11? This is going down in history as worse than 9/11. You guys smoking crack? You guys doing drugs? Get out of here with that. It was no way. Not even comparable. Not even comparable at all. Not at all. But that's how this misinformation goes. And that's why it's real hard for me to bite my tongue, even though these idiots are speaking, when they are saying something that is completely not true, that you can go read, you can go watch the live feed, you can go see for yourself that these are not facts that they're saying. I have to interrupt these idiots. When they say something like that, especially about Michigan, I have to step in and be like, no, that's not true. This is what was said. Go look it up. You can look it up. If you put in a little bit of effort, you can see the truth. If you weren't sitting here watching it with me, happening. It's crazy. I mean, we were watching Antifa at the ICE building in Portland, I don't know, a week ago. And somebody said something that wasn't true. And one of the camera guys was like, well, yeah, you can read it right here. And the camera person we were watching says in reply, oh, I don't like to read. I don't like reading things. If I got to read it, I'm not going to look at it. That's the problem. That's the problem right there. If it's not on video, if it's not an audio recording, if it's not on TikTok, these people are not searching for the truth. They're not searching for the truth. They could care less. If the truth doesn't, or if the information is not coming through video or audio, they're not receiving the information. That's why, like you see, they're using these news articles and stuff to try and push their narrative. That's why they're only reading the parts that they want you to pay attention to. A lot of these tweets they showed yesterday from the president, they're like, oh, he said this. And they just highlight like a couple words out of the whole tweet. But if you read it, almost all of them end with be peaceful, be respectful, be patriotic. But they don't want to read that part. So when these clips come out on Facebook and TikTok and wherever, these non-reading idiots out here are going to literally only watch that part. They're going to watch it and they're going to be like, oh, well, this elected official in the Senate said this, that, and the other. When it could literally be right there on the screen. Just read the bottom of it, the non-read out loud part. And it would totally conflict with what they're saying. These people could literally watch that video and just miss it because they refuse to read. It's control. This is full-blown control. And I don't know who they think they're lying to. The problem is what can be done about it. What can be done about it? People don't like it, vote them out. Yeah. Don't give up on voting. I've seen a lot of people do that when the election stuff happened. People are like, I'm never voting again. That's what they want. They don't want you to vote. Because in countries where they are, they have dictators, they don't get to vote. So if you willingly give up your right to vote, you're giving them what they want. You have to keep voting. But there has to be a way to make it transparent or to hold them accountable. One or the other or both. Because, this whole secret voting thing that they got going on, I've never understood that. The whole time I've been old enough to vote. I'll be 32 in like 5 weeks. Maybe not even that long. What's the date? 4 or 5 weeks, probably. I'm be 32. The whole time I've been old enough to vote, I have never understood why it's a big secret. And people are always like, oh, well, people can do stuff to you. They could hurt you. They could break into your car and burn your house down. You'd be fired from your job. Those are hate crimes. Like, we have laws, we have rights, and we still have officers that haven't been defunded yet. What do you mean? I have not been given a good reason on why it's got to be a big secret. It shouldn't be a big secret. Everybody's so proud that they wear shirts, that they put signs in their yard, they hang flags, they put flags on their trucks and stuff. They got magnets on their trucks. They got stickers all over the place saying who they support. Why does it have to be a big secret on who you voted for? That does not make sense, and that opens the doorway for stuff like this to happen. They want to know why people are mad. It's because they're not doing right by the people. It has nothing to do with the president. They're just trying to... I said this before, and I've said this to a couple different situations. When people want to provide resistance, what authority does. They did this in the Holocaust. They've done this in lots of different situations across history. When there is resistance, the authority in the situation, good or bad, takes out the lead of the resistance and makes them the example. Does that seem familiar? You ever seen a Holocaust video? I know there's people out there that believe the Holocaust didn't happen. We're not even going to dig into that. Keep your head in the sand if you believe that. They would take somebody who was causing issues in the Holocaust and they would tune them up right there in front of everyone. Make them the example. Just in case you had similar thoughts, this is what happened to you. Now look, they're taking who they believe was the head of the resistance, of the whole idea that they're not doing right by the people, and they're going to make him the example. And look how it's gone. Look how it's gone. They demonized everyone at the Capitol. Not that I'm condoning what happened at the Capitol in any kind of way, but people were upset because they believed the government was not doing right by the people. The upset people caused resistance. In reaction, they demonized those people. So anyone else who thought that, you're upset and you believe that what's going on is not right, you better keep that to yourself, or else you'll end up like these people. You see how the similarities here? It's like this behavior is not unique. Not in any kind of way. Not in any kind of way. They're making an example out of the biggest figure of resistance. It's ridiculous. Let's see. Was there any footage from Seattle last night? I couldn't find anything going on last night. People were saying that there was stuff supposed to happen in Seattle, that there was possibly stuff going on in Portland. I know there was like a officer-involved shooting or something like that going on in Seattle 2 nights ago. I figured there would be protesting, if not rioting, going on in Seattle, but I could not find anything. And when I say that, I mean I'm searching all platforms. It's not like I'm just on Facebook or I'm just on YouTube or whatever. I search all platforms, and there was no lives going on for Seattle or Portland or period. I couldn't find anything going on. Lots of people playing video games. And like I've said before, I think it has to do with the cold weather. I know that it's been pretty nice on the West Coast, but over here on the East Coast, especially here in Michigan, for like 2 weeks, we haven't even had double digits. Like, it's been terrible over here. Yeah, so I haven't found any lives going on, but no streams were allowed apparently. I don't know about it being allowed. I know that in Portland, it was like 2 nights ago, we streamed. They were marching about closing a pipeline or something. They actually handed out papers to the live streamers telling them what they were and were not allowed to live stream. They also flagged them with yellow bands. They made them put like yellow tape on their arm or their clothing or whatever to signal that these live streamers understand what they're allowed and not allowed to do, and that they are in compliance. So I don't know if that's going on in mass right now or what, but I don't think it's censorship. I know people are suggesting, the live streamers are being censored and this, that, and the other. Those Antifa live streamers do not get censored. I don't see that happen at all. They say whatever and do whatever and show whatever. They're showing the pew-pew sticks and all that stuff, and nothing is happening to them. And most of them are on Twitch. Most of them have migrated to Twitch. So you can go to Twitch and you'll see 6, 7, 8, 9 Antifa live streamers who just openly admitted at this point. They used to not say that. They'd be like, I'm not Antifa, I'm BLM. And I know there's a lot of mixed feelings when you start comparing Antifa and BLM and, oh, well, they hijacked BLM. A lot of these Antifa live streamers and protesters, I have watched them since their first day of protesting. When they were just out there in t-shirts, barefaced, or wearing a little goofy paper mask like a nurse, to them coming out now in riot gear with weapons and this, that, and the other. And people are like, oh, BLM and Antifa are different. Not from what I'm seeing. I don't know if they started on the BLM train and then all of a sudden hopped on the Antifa train, but these are the same exact human beings. I have watched these people for months. I have watched their thought process change. I have watched their behavior change. I have watched them go from just simply believing they're standing up for civil rights to the point now where they're totally disappointed if they're not getting pepper sprayed and shot with pepper balls. They're standing outside of the ICE building like, please come play with us. Just disappointed. They don't have a mission anymore. They're just bored. They're bored and they're trying to find reasons to be upset. That's all that's going on anymore. Yeah, I see you guys listening, these people. Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I try to keep my eyes on everything. And that's why I always tell you guys, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, pay attention to what's going on. You don't have to believe what I say. I'm not telling you what to think, what to feel, or what to do. We're watching these lives together. I've just watched a lot of them consecutively, day after day, hours after hours. I've seen all this stuff. That's why I speak on it. It's not that. It's not about being right. It's not about looking cool. It's about the fact that I've seen it live. And so if I can point you in the right direction, I will do so. But I want you to go look. I want you to go read. I want you to go watch it. I want you to be just as informed as I am. I don't want to give you secondhand information. I'm just trying to point you in the right direction. So thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate all of you. I will get through these shout outs, but let's hear some more lies and cries.
Harm visited upon America's national security by these events and the damage to our international reputation.
I'm going to see if my merch is at the door. One sec.
My colleagues discussed with you the many harms to our nation as a result of President Trump's conduct. Now, I'd like to spend some time talking about the harm to our national security and our standing in the world. On January 6th, when President Trump incited a mob to march to the Capitol, he led them to a building that houses some of our nation's most sensitive information. And consider who was part of that mob. Some of the individuals were on the FBI watch list. The past behavior of some individuals led here by President Trump so alarmed investigators that their names had been added to the National Terrorist Screening Database. And at least one of the insurrectionists may have intended to steal information and give it to a foreign adversary. According to charging documents, Riley Williams allegedly helped steal a laptop from Speaker Pelosi's office to, quote, send the computer device to a friend in Russia, who then planned to sell the device to SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. While we can't be certain if or how many foreign spies infiltrated the crowd, or at least coordinated with those who did, we can be sure that any enemy who wanted access to our secrets would have wanted to be part of that mob inside these halls. And the point is this: many of the insurrectionists that President Trump incited to invade this chamber were dangerous. People on the FBI watch list, violent extremists, white supremacists. And these insurrectionists, incited by President Trump, threatened our national security. Stealing laptops again from Speaker Pelosi's office, taking documents from Leader McConnell's desk, snapping photographs, as you saw in the videos earlier, in sensitive areas, ransacking your offices, rifling through your desks. The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, knew the risk of anyone breaching the Capitol. He swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend this country. And yet, he incited them here to break into the Capitol. Senators, as you all know, we have spent trillions of dollars building the strongest military in the world and billions of dollars on the most sophisticated weaponry on the planet to prevent the kind of attack that occurred at this Capitol on January 6th. And here's what the insurrectionists incited by President Trump did.
Hey, let's take a seat, people! Let's take a seat! Hey, Nancy Pelosi. Let's vote on some shit!
Oh my God, we did this shit. We took this shit.
I want to just get a snap of that.
Yeah, I took a picture.
In many ways, this room is sacred, and so are the traditions that it represents. They've been carried on for centuries. Congress has declared war 11 times on this floor, including entering World War II. And Congress passed the Civil Rights Act and expanded the right to vote to ensure that no matter your race or your gender, you have a voice in our nation. And this floor is where history has been made. And now, our intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies have the burden to figure out exactly what was stolen, taken, ransacked, and compromised. As acting U.S. Attorney Michael Sherwin explained, quote, materials were stolen, and we have to identify what was done, mitigate that, and it could have potential national security equities. These investigations are necessary now because of the actions of President Trump. And it wasn't just the people that he led here the intelligence agencies have to look into. It's also what they took and what they gathered. And it was the very fact that this building, with so much sensitive information and some classified information, that this Capitol was breached. And think about it. Every foreign adversary considering attacking this building got to watch a dress rehearsal, and they saw that this Capitol could be overtaken. As Elizabeth Newman, a former Trump administration official, stated, quote, "You have terrorists who would love to destroy the Capitol. They just saw how easy it was to penetrate. We just exposed a huge vulnerability." And it's not just the Capitol. This attack has implications for all government buildings. And Senator Rubio made this point well.
If you're a terrorist right now and you're sitting out there watching this, you're saying to yourself, hey, it's not that hard to get into the Capitol. Maybe that's not hard to get into the White House or the Supreme Court building or somewhere else.
Our government, our intelligence agencies, and our law enforcement have implemented additional safety measures since the attack on January 6th. But while we secure this physical space, what message will we send the rest of the world? We already know that the message our adversaries took from January 6th. This is how some of them responded after the attack. Quote, "For America's adversaries, there was no greater proof of the fallibility of Western democracy than the sight of the U.S. Capitol shrouded in smoke and besieged by a mob whipped up by their unwillingly outgoing president." And to make matters worse, our adversaries are even using the events of January 6th not only to denigrate America, but to justify their own anti-democratic behavior, calling America hypocritical. Here's what the Chinese government is saying. The spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the Capitol riot should spark, quote, deep reflection among U.S. lawmakers regarding how they discuss the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, suggesting that the U.S. is hypocritical in denouncing Beijing's crackdown in the city while it struggles with its own unrest at home. In the Global Times, an outlet affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party, even tweeted a series of side-by-side photos of two events, the siege of the U.S. Capitol and a July 2019 incident in which pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong broke into the city's Legislative Council building. Think about that. President Trump gave the Chinese government an opening to create a false equivalency between Hong Kongers protesting for democracy and violent insurrectionists trying to overthrow it. As Representative Gallagher described in real time,
and if we don't think other countries around the world are watching this happen right now, if we don't think the Chinese Communist Party is sitting back and laughing, then we're deluding ourselves. So call it off, Mr. President. We need you to call this off.
Russia has also seized on this violent attack against our government, decrying that democracy is, quote, over. The chairman of the Russian Upper House of Parliament's International Affairs Committee said, quote, the celebration of democracy is over. This is, alas, actually the bottom. I say this without a hint of gloating. America is no longer charting the course and therefore has lost all its rights to set it, and especially to impose it on others. They're using President Trump's incitement of an insurrection to declare that democracy is over. In Iran, the supreme leader is using President Trump's incitement of insurrection to mock America. He said of the situation in the United States, quote, this is their democracy and human rights. This is their election scandal. These are their values. These values are being mocked by the whole world. Even their friends are laughing at them. And these statements are serious and pervasive. And according to a joint threat assessment bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and 8 other law enforcement entities, quote, since the incident at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, Russian, Iranian, and Chinese influence actors have seized the opportunity to amplify narratives in furtherance of their policy interests amid the presidential transition. We cannot let them use what happened on January 6th to define us, who we are, and what we stand for. We get to define ourselves by how we respond to the attack of January 6th. And some might be tempted to say and point out that our adversaries are always going to be critical of the United States. But following the insurrection on January 6th, even our allies are speaking up. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, quote, what we witnessed was an assault on democracy by violent rioters, incited by the current president and other politicians. As shocking, deeply disturbing, and frankly saddening as that event remains, we have also seen this week that democracy is resilient in America, our closest ally and neighbor. The German foreign minister said, quote, this closing of ranks begins with holding those accountable who are responsible for such escalations. That includes the violent rioters, and it also includes their instigators. The world is watching and wondering whether we are who we say we are. Because when our other countries have known chaos, our Constitution has helped keep order in America. This is why we have a Constitution. We must stand up for the rule of law because the rule of law doesn't just stand up by itself. After the insurrection, my colleagues on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the chairman and the ranking member, issued a bipartisan statement that said, quote, "America has always been a beacon of freedom to the world, proof that free and fair elections are achievable and that democracy works. But what happened at the Capitol today has scarred our reputation and has damaged our standing in the world. Today's violence, an inevitable result when leaders in positions of power misled the public, will certainly empower dictators and damage struggling democracies." And that's true. For generations, the United States has been a North Star in the world for freedom, democracy, and human rights, because America is not only a nation, for many, it's also an idea. It's the light that gives hope to people struggling for democracy in autocratic regimes, the light that inspires people fighting across the world for fundamental human rights, and the light that inspires us to believe in something larger than ourselves. And this trial is an opportunity to respond and to send a message back to the world. And I say this as somebody who loves my country, our country, just as all of you do. There is a lot of courage in this room, a lot of courage that has been demonstrated in the lives of the people in this room. Some folks have stood up for the civil rights of fellow Americans and risked their careers and their reputations, their livelihoods, and their safety, standing up for civil rights. Many members of Congress have risked their lives in service to our country, in uniform, fighting in the jungles of Vietnam, patrolling the mountains of Afghanistan. You served our country because you were willing to sacrifice to defend our nation as we know it and as the world knows it. And although most of you have traded in your uniform for public service, your country needs you one more time. The world watched President Trump tell his big lie. The world watched his supporters come to Washington at his invitation. And the world watched as he told his supporters to march here to the Capitol. And President Trump, our commander-in-chief at the time, failed to take any action to defend us, as he utterly failed in his duty to preserve, protect, and defend. And now, the world is watching us, wondering whether our constitutional republic is going to respond the way it should, the way it's supposed to, whether the rule of law will prevail over mob rule. Because the answer to that question has consequences far beyond our own borders. Think of the consequences to our diplomats and negotiators as they sit at tables around the world to enforce our agenda on trade, the economy, and human rights. To fail to convict a president of the United States who incited a deadly insurrection, who acted in concert with a violent mob, who interfered with the certification of the Electoral College votes, who abdicated his duty as commander-in-chief, would be to forfeit the power of our example as a North Star on freedom, democracy, human rights, and most of all, on the rule of law. And to convict Donald Trump would mean that America stands for the rule of law, no matter who violates it. Let us show the world that January 6th was not America. And let us remind the world that we are truly their North Star.
Is it time for this guy to cry today?
Representative Neguse and I will now address the First Amendment argument that's being offered by President Trump's lawyers to try to excuse his incitement to this insurrection, and Mr. Neguse will begin.
Yeah, when does the defense get to speak? Is that a part of the trial, or is that just not a part of this? Is that not how things work here in the Senate?
Mr. President, distinguished senators, good afternoon. You have heard over the course of the last several days overwhelming evidence that President Trump incited an insurrection. But as Lead Manager Raskin mentioned, as we prepare to close, we'd be remiss if we didn't just briefly address the principal defense that the President will offer to excuse his conduct, and that is this notion that he can't be held accountable for what happened on January 6th because his actions are somehow protected by the First Amendment. Now, let's stop a moment and try to really understand the argument that they are making. According to President Trump, everything he did, everything we showed you that he did, was perfectly okay for him to do, and for a future president to do again. And the Constitution, apparently, in their view, forbids you from doing anything to stop it. That can't be right. It can't be. And it isn't right. Their argument is meant as a distraction. They are concerned not with the facts that actually occurred, the facts that we've proven, but with an alternative set of facts, where President Trump did nothing but deliver a controversial speech at a rally. Of course, that's not what we've charged in the article of impeachment, and it's not what happened. You will hear from my colleague, Lead Manager Raskin, the many myriad reasons why this argument that they make is wrong on the law, completely. Not just around the edges. They make major, fundamental mistakes of constitutional law, the kind that Lead Manager Raskin tells me wouldn't cut it in his first year law course, which of course he certainly would know since he has taught this subject for decades. And that explains why so many lawyers who've dedicated their lives to protecting free speech, including many of the nation's most prominent conservative free speech lawyers, have described President Trump's First Amendment claims as, quote, legally frivolous. There's another quote from a recent letter from prominent free speech lawyers that, quote, the First Amendment is no bar to the Senate convicting former President Trump and disqualifying him from holding future office. Their argument is wrong on the facts, wrong on the law, and would flip the Constitution upside down. Let's start with the facts. Because as you'll see, his free speech claim depends on an account of what he did, of why we're here, that has no basis in the evidence. To hear his lawyers tell it, he was just some guy at a rally expressing unpopular opinions. They would have you believe that this whole impeachment is because he said things that one may disagree with. Really? And make no mistake, they will do anything to avoid talking about the facts of this case. That I can assure you. Instead, we expect they will talk about a lot of other speeches including some given by Democratic officials, and they will insist with indignation that the First Amendment protects all of this as though it were exactly the same. We trust you to know the difference because you've seen the evidence that we've seen. You've seen, as we've proven over the last 3 days, that his arguments completely misdescribe the reality of what happened on January 6th. They leave out everything that matters about why we're here and what he did. Because President Trump wasn't just some guy with political opinions who showed up at a rally on January 6th and delivered controversial remarks. He was the President of the United States. And he had spent months, using the unique power of that office, of his bully pulpit, to spread that big lie that the election had been stolen, to convince his followers to stop the steal, to assemble them just blocks away from here on January 6th, at the very moment that we were meeting to count the electoral college votes, where he knew, where it had been widely reported that they were primed and eager and ready for violence at his signal. And then, standing in the middle of that explosive situation, in that powder keg that he had created over the course of months, before a crowd filled with people that were poised for violence, at his signal, he struck a match, and he aimed it straight at this building, at us. You've seen all that evidence. There's no denying it. That's why the House impeached him. That's why he's on trial. No president, no matter their politics or the politics of their followers, conservative, liberal, or anything else, no president can do what President Trump did. Because this isn't about politics. It's about his refusal to accept the outcome of the election and his decision to incite an insurrection. And there's no serious argument that the First Amendment protects that. And it would be extraordinarily dangerous for the United States Senate to conclude otherwise. To tell future presidents that they can do exactly what President Trump did and get away with it. To set the precedent that this is an acceptable, now a constitutionally protected way to respond to losing an election. And you'll notice something, certainly something Lead Manager Raskin and I noticed, which is that by all accounts, it doesn't appear that President Trump's lawyers disagree. I mean, they don't insist that if the facts we've charged, the facts that we have proven, the facts supported by overwhelming evidence are true, as of course you now know they are, that there's nothing you can do. They're not arguing that it's okay for a person to incite a mob to violence. At least I don't think they're arguing that. Instead, what they are doing is offering a radically different version of what happened that day, totally inconsistent with the evidence. And then they insist that if that fictional version of events, if that alternate reality were true, well then he may be protected by the First Amendment. That's their argument. But you are here to adjudicate real evidence, real facts, not hypothetical ones. And for that reason alone, you should reject their argument, because it has been advanced to defend a situation that bears no resemblance to the actual facts of this case. With that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Lead Manager Raskin, to address the many legal flaws, as I mentioned, in President Trump's position.
So Mr. Neguse just explained why President Trump's last-ditch First Amendment arguments got nothing to do with the actual facts of the case. He's been impeached for inciting violent insurrection against the government. Incitement to violent insurrection is not protected by free speech. There is no First Amendment defense to impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors. The idea itself is absurd. And the whole First Amendment smokescreen is a completely irrelevant distraction from the standard of high crimes and misdemeanors governing a president who has violated his oath of office. Yet, President Trump, we know, has a good way of treating up as down and wrong as right. He tried to pull off the biggest election fraud in American history by overturning the results of the 2020 election, even as he insisted that his own fraud was in fact an effort to stop the steal, to stop a fraud, a vast conspiracy that he blamed on local and state officials of both political parties, the media, election officials, the judiciary, federal, state, members of Congress, many others. Anybody who wouldn't go along with them was part of the conspiracy. He violated his own oath of office by inciting mob violence to prevent Congress from counting the Electoral College votes as we're assigned to do by the 12th Amendment and the Electoral Count Act, even as he attacked Vice President Pence at a rally for violating his oath of office and going along with an egregious assault on democracy. Now he argues that the Congress is violating his free speech rights when it was Donald Trump who incited an insurrectionist attack against us that halted speech and debate on the floor of the House and the Senate during the peaceful transfer of power, and that imperiled the very constitutional order that protects freedom of speech in the first place, along with all of our other fundamental rights. As a matter of law, as a matter of logic, President Trump's brazen attempt to invoke the First Amendment now won't hold up in any way. The basic flaw, of course, is that it completely ignores the fact that he was president of the United States, a public official. He swears an oath as president that nobody else swears. In exchange, he's given greater powers than anybody else in the entire country, maybe on earth. He or she promises to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and our government institutions and our people. And as we all know, the power we entrust to people in public office, in government office, especially our presidents, comes with special obligations to uphold the laws and the integrity of our republic. And we all swear that oath. Now, what if a president publicly, say a president publicly and on a daily basis advocated replacing the Constitution with a totalitarian form of government, and urged states to secede from the Union, and swore an oath of loyalty to a foreign leader or foreign government? Well, as a private citizen, you couldn't do anything about people using those words to advocate totalitarianism, to advocate secession from the Union, to swear an oath of personal loyalty to a foreign leader or a foreign government or country. You couldn't. That's totally protected. If you tried to prosecute somebody for that, as a prosecutor, you would lose. But it is simply inconceivable, unthinkable, that a president could do any of these things. Get up and swear an oath to foreign governments or leaders, advocate totalitarianism, advocate secession, and not be impeached for it. It's just unthinkable that that could happen. Would that violate their First Amendment rights? The opposite view pressed here by President Trump's counsel would leave the nation powerless to respond to a president who uses the unmatched power, privilege, and prestige of his or her office, the famous bully pulpit, in ways that risk the ruin of the republic, all for his or her own ambition and corruption and lust for power. Everyone should be clear. There's nothing remotely exotic about what we're saying. It should be common sense to everybody. Common sense about this understanding of the First Amendment as it applies to public servants, cops, firefighters, teachers, everybody across the land. My daughter, who I mentioned earlier in the trial, she's a teacher in a public school. The courts have said teachers teach, but if they go off script and they start advocating totalitarianism, treason, or what have you, they're not living up to the duties of their office as teacher, they can be fired. Everybody knows that. And it happens all the time, by the way, including to cops and firefighters and people on the front lines. It happens all the time. In fact, it happened countless times to people fired by President Trump for their statements or ideas about things, including on election fraud, not long ago. There were people in the government who lost their jobs because the president didn't like what they said or what they wrote. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, and I can't help but repeat it, Justice Scalia got it exactly right on this. He wrote on these cases about how the First Amendment affects people who take on a public office, who take on public employment. And he summed it up like this. He said, you can't ride with the cops, but root for the robbers. You can't ride with the cops, but root for the robbers. That's what Justice Scalia said. And when it comes to the peaceful transfer of power, to the rule of law, to respecting election outcomes, our president, whoever he or she is, must choose the side of the Constitution. Must. And not the side of the insurrection or the coup or anybody who's coming against us. And if he or she chooses the wrong side, I'm sorry. There's nothing in the First Amendment or anywhere else in the Constitution that can excuse your betrayal of your oath of office. It's not a free speech question. But there's more. Let's play make-believe and pretend that President Trump were just a run-of-the-mill private citizen, as my colleague Mr. Nagu said, just another guy at the rally who's just expressing a deeply unpopular opinion, because we shouldn't overlook the fact that while there were thousands of people in that violent mob, they represent a tiny, tiny, tiny part of less than 1% of the population, and the vast majority of the American people reject the kind of seditious mob violence that we saw on January 6th. But let's say that he were just another guy in the crowd that day. It is a bedrock principle that nobody can incite a riot. First Amendment doesn't protect it. Key case, Brandenburg versus Ohio. There's no First Amendment protection for speech directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and likely to produce such action. And for all the reasons you've heard, based on the voluminous, comprehensive, totally unrefuted, and we think irrefutable, but we're eager to hear our colleagues, based on all the evidence you've heard, and for all the reasons you've heard, that definition of proscribable speech fits President Trump's conduct perfectly. This is a classic case of incitement. And you don't have to take my word for it. The 144 free speech lawyers Mr. Nagu mentioned, who include many of the nation's most dedicated, most uncompromising free speech advocates, unlike Mr. Trump, of course, but these people agree that there is a powerful case for conviction under the Brandenburg standard, even if the President of the United States were just to be treated like some guy in the crowd. And they add, the First Amendment is no defense to the article of impeachment leveled against the former president. And I mention the Brandenburg standard not because it applies here. Of course it doesn't, since this is an impeachment. It's not a criminal trial, and there's no risk of jail time. Let's be clear about that. The president doesn't go to jail for 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour, or 1 minute based on impeachment and conviction and disqualification from further office. Rather, I mention it to emphasize that absolutely nobody in America would be protected by the First Amendment if they did all the things that Donald Trump did. Nobody made Donald Trump run for president and swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution on January 20th, 2017. But when he did, by virtue of swearing that oath and entering this high office, he took upon himself a duty to affirmatively take care that our laws would be faithfully executed under his leadership. All of the laws against federal destruction of property, all of the laws. We expected him in everything he said and everything he did to protect and preserve and defend our constitutional system, including the separation of powers. But instead, he betrayed us. And as Representative Cheney said, it was the greatest betrayal of a presidential oath in the history of the United States of America. The greatest. As I mentioned yesterday, President Trump is not even close to the proverbial citizen who falsely shouts fire in a crowded theater. He is like the now proverbial municipal fire chief who incites a mob to go set the theater on fire and not only refuses to put out the fire, but encourages the mob to keep going as the blaze spreads. We would hold that fire chief accountable. We would forbid him from that job ever again, and that's exactly what must happen here. There are hundreds of millions of citizens who can be president. Donald Trump has disqualified himself, and you must disqualify him too. Just like the fire chief who sends the mob, President Trump perverted his office by attacking the very Constitution he was sworn to uphold. In fact, that's one reason why this free speech rhetoric at this trial is so insidious. His conduct represented the most devastating and dangerous assault by a government official on our Constitution, including the First Amendment in living memory. We wouldn't have free speech or any other rights if we didn't have the rule of law, peaceful transfer of power, and a democracy where the outcome of the election is accepted by the candidate who lost. We had it all the way up until 2020. And the central purposes of the First Amendment are democratic self-government and civic truth-seeking. Two purposes that President Trump sought to undermine, not advance, in the course of his conduct, as we have definitively demonstrated this trial. The violence he incited threatened all of our freedoms. It threatened the very constitutional order that protects free speech, due process, religious free exercise, the right to vote, equal protection, and the many other fundamental rights that we all treasure and cherish as citizens of the United States. The First Amendment does not create some superpower immunity from impeachment for a president who attacks the Constitution in word and deed while rejecting the outcome of an election he happened to lose. If anything, President Trump's conduct was an assault on the First Amendment and equal protection rights that millions of Americans exercised when they voted last year, often under extraordinarily difficult and arduous circumstances. Remember, the First Amendment protects the right of the people to speak about the great issues of our day, to debate during elections, and then to participate in politics by selecting the people who will be our leaders. And remember, in American democracy, those of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. Nothing. Not the masters of the people. We have no kings here. We have no czars. Here the people govern, President Ford said. The people. Most important words of the Constitution are the first three, we the people. But all this means little if a president who dislikes the election results can incite violence to try to replace and usurp the will of the people, as expressed in the states. Ignore the judicial branch of government and then run over the legislative branch of government with a mob. President Trump's high crimes and misdemeanors sought to nullify the political rights and sovereignty of the American people. Our right as a people to deliberate, to form opinions, to persuade each other to vote, and then to decide who our president will be. The sovereignty of the people. That's an attack on the First Amendment, I would say. In addition, President Trump's actions were a direct attack on our own freedom of speech here in the Capitol. Members of Congress are sent here to speak for their constituents. That's why we have our own little mini free speech clause, the speech and debate clause. That's literally our job. We come here and represent the views of our people. The attack that President Trump incited forced members of Congress to stop speaking and to literally flee for our lives and the lives of our staffs and our families. The man whose statements and actions halted speech in Congress, speech related to the peaceful transfer of power, has no right no right to claim that free speech principles prevent this body from exercising its constitutional powers to hold him accountable for his offense against us. You know, Voltaire said famously, and our founders knew it, "I may disagree with everything you say, but I will defend with my life your right to say it." President Trump says, "Because I disagree with everything you say, I will overturn your popular election and incite insurrection against the government." And we might take a moment to consider another Voltaire insight, which a high school teacher of mine told me when a student asked, "When was the beginning of the Enlightenment?" And she said, "I think it was when Voltaire said, 'Anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities.'" There's no merit whatsoever to any of the free speech rhetoric, the empty free speech rhetoric you may hear from President Trump's lawyers. He attacked the First Amendment, he attacked the Constitution, he betrayed his oath of office. Presidents don't have any right to do that. It's forbidden, so that our republic may survive. The people are far more important than that. The precedent he asks you to create, which would allow any future president to do precisely what he did, is self-evidently dangerous. And so there can be no doubt, none at all, the president lacks any First Amendment excuse or defense or immunity. He incited a violent insurrection against our government. He must be convicted. And now I'm going to call up Representative Dean, who will explain why, contrary to the president's claims, the House provided him with all the process that was due to him in this impeachment process. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Liu is going to do that.
Thank you for your time and your attention. We all heard President Trump's attorneys on Tuesday, and as part of President Trump's efforts to avoid talking about his own conduct, to avoid talking about anything related to his constitutional crime, we expect that President Trump will raise process objections. His due process claims are without merit. Under the Constitution, the House has, quote, the sole power of impeachment. That provision confirms that the House functions as a grand jury or a prosecutor. The House decides whether to bring charges. Now, in other impeachment cases, the House has provided certain deliberative and procedural privileges to the person being impeached, but those are exactly that, privileges. They are discretionary. The House has the power to decide its own rules, how it wants to pass the article of impeachment. And in this case, the House debated the article of impeachment and passed it on a bipartisan vote. I'm a former prosecutor, and I just want to add that I've had the opportunity to decide whether to bring charges. And when you see a crime committed in plain view, prosecutors don't have to spend months investigating before they bring charges. I note that in this case, in fact, hundreds of people have been arrested and charged by prosecutors for the violence on January 6th. There was no reason for the House to wait to impeach the man at the very top that incited the violence. I'd also like to emphasize that the House had good reason to move quickly. This was an exigent circumstance. This was not a case where there was hidden conduct or some conspiracy that required months and maybe years of investigation. This case does not raise very complicated legal issues. The gravity of the president's conduct demanded the clearest of responses from the legislature, particularly given that the president was still in office at the time the House approved this article, and rumors of further violence echoed around the country. They still do. There must be absolutely no doubt that Congress will act decisively against a president that incites violence against us. That is why the House moved quickly here. And President Trump, who created that emergency, cannot be heard to complain that the House impeached him too quickly for the emergency he caused. Another point on the due process question. Earlier in this trial, President Trump's attorneys suggested that the House somehow deliberately delayed the transmission of this article of impeachment. That is simply not accurate. When the House adopted this article of impeachment on a bipartisan vote, we were ready to begin trial. But the Senate was not in session at the time. And when we inquired as to our options, Senate officials told us clearly and in no uncertain terms that if the clerk of the House attempted to deliver the article of impeachment to the Secretary of the Senate before the Senate reconvened, that the clerk of the House would have been turned back at the door. That's why the trial did not begin then. It's another reason why the President's objections of due process are meritless. And finally, let me just conclude that you all are going to see and have seen a full presentation of evidence by the House, and you're going to hear a full presentation by the President's attorneys. You're going to be able to ask questions. The Senate has the sole power to try all impeachments. President Trump is receiving any and all process that he is due right here in this chamber.
Mr. President, Senators, in just a moment, my colleague, Mr. Neguse, will return to show that we've established with overwhelming evidence that President Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors. Before Mr. Neguse comes up, though, I'd like to emphasize what should be an uncontroversial point, but is really key to understand. If we have proven to you the conduct that we've alleged in this article, then President Trump has indeed committed a high crime and misdemeanor under the Constitution. Incitement of insurrection under these circumstances is undoubtedly, in the words of George Mason from the Constitutional Convention, a great and dangerous offense against the Republic. Indeed, it is hard to think of a greater or more dangerous offense against the Republic than this one. So, to be very precise about this, I hope we all can agree today that if a president does incite a violent insurrection against the government, he can be impeached for it. I hope we all can agree that that is a constitutional crime. Another key point, while President Trump's lawyers may be arguing otherwise, the question here is not whether President Trump committed a crime under the federal code or DC law or the law of any state. Impeachment does not result in criminal penalties, as we keep emphasizing. No one spends a day in jail. There are not even criminal or civil fines. Centuries of history, not to mention the constitutional text, structure, and original intent and understanding, all confirm the teaching of James Wilson, another framer who wrote that impeachments and offenses come not within the sphere of ordinary jurisprudence. Simply put, impeachment was created for a purpose separate and distinct from criminal punishment. It was created to prevent and deter elected officials who swear an oath to represent America, but then commit dangerous offenses against our republic. That's a constitutional crime. And senators, what greater offense could one commit than to incite a violent insurrection at our seat of government?
A violent erection?
Transfer of power. In circumstances where violence is foreseeable, where a crowd is poised for violence to provoke a mob of thousands to attack us with weapons and sticks and poles, to bludgeon and beat our law enforcement officers and to deface these sacred walls and to trash the place, and to do so while seeking to stop us from fulfilling our own oaths, our own duties to uphold the Constitution by counting the votes from our free and fair elections, and then to sit back and watch in delight as insurrectionists attack us? violating a sacred oath and engaging in a profound dereliction and desertion of duty? How can we assure that our Commander-in-Chief will protect, preserve, and defend us and our Constitution if we don't hold a president accountable in a circumstance like this? What is impeachable conduct if not this? I challenge you all to think about it. If you think this is not impeachable, what is? What would be? If President Trump's lawyers endorse his breathtaking assertion that his conduct in inciting these events was totally appropriate, and the Senate acquits Donald Trump, then any president could incite and provoke insurrectionary violence against us again. If you don't find this a high crime and misdemeanor today, you have set a new terrible standard for presidential misconduct in the United States of America. The only real question here is the factual one. Did we prove that Donald Trump, while President of the United States, incited a violent insurrection against the government? Incitement, of course, is an inherently fact-based and fact-intensive judgment, which is why we commend you all for your scrupulous attention to everything that took place. But we believe that we have shown you overwhelming evidence in this case that would convince anyone using their common sense that this was indeed incitement, meaning that Donald Trump's conduct encouraged violence, the violence was foreseeable, and he acted willfully in the actions that encouraged violence. Mr. Neguse will take you through that evidence again. Not the whole thing, we're almost done. We're almost done, but we don't want it to be said, they never proved this or they never proved that, because my magnificent team of managers has stayed up night after night after night through weeks to compile all of the factual evidence, and we have put it before you, and we have put it before all of you in this public trial, because we love our country that much. Mr. Neguse will show you that we've proven our case and that President Trump committed this impeachable offense that we impeached him for on January 13th, and that you should convict him. And when he's finished, I will return and explain why it's dangerous for us to ignore this and why you must convict, and then we will rest. Mr. Neguse.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, good afternoon again. As my colleague, Lead Manager Raskin, mentioned, I know it's been a long few days, and I want to say thank you, that we're very grateful for your patience, for your attention.
This guy's real proud of himself. Look at that body language.
Managers, as they have presented our case. As Lead Manager Raskin mentioned, I hope, I trust, that we could all agree that if a president incites a violent insurrection against our government, that that's impeachable conduct. So what I'd like to do as we close our case is just walk you through why our evidence overwhelmingly establishes that President Trump committed that offense. Now, as you consider that question of whether the president incited an insurrection, there are three questions that reasonably come to mind. Was violence foreseeable? Did he encourage violence? And did he act willfully? And I'm going to show you why the answer to every one of those questions has to be yes. First, let's start with foreseeability. Was it foreseeable that the violence would erupt on January 6th if President Trump lit a spark? Was it predictable that the crowd at the Save America rally was poised on a hair trigger for violence, that they would fight, literally, if provoked to do so? Of course it was. When President Trump stood up to that podium on January 6th, he knew that many in that crowd were inflamed, were armed, were ready for violence. It was an explosive situation, and he knew it. We've shown you the evidence on this point. You've seen it. The images, the videos, the articles, and the pattern, which show that the violence on that terrible day was entirely foreseeable. We've showed you how this all began with the big lie, the claim that the election was rigged and that President Trump and his supporters were the victims of a massive fraud, a massive conspiracy to rip away their votes. We've showed you how President Trump spread that lie and how over the course of months, with his support and encouragement, it inflamed part of his base, resulting in death threats, real-world violence, and increasingly extreme calls to stop the steal. We established that after he lost the election, the president was willing to do just about anything to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. That he tried everything he could do to stop it. You'll recall the evidence on the screen. Him pressuring and threatening state election officials, attacking them to the point of literally calling them enemies of the state, threatening at least one of them with criminal penalties. Then attacking senators, members of Congress, all across the media. Pressuring the Justice Department, prompting outcries from assistant U.S. attorneys, not to mention his own attorney general, reportedly telling him that the stolen election claims were, quote, BS, not my phrase, his. And then, as January 6th approached, he moved on to attacking his own vice president, openly and savagely. We recounted throughout that entire period all the ways in which President Trump inflamed his supporters with lies that the election was stolen. And as every single one of us knows, nothing in this country is more sacred, nothing, than our right to vote, our voice. And here you have the President of the United States telling his supporters that their voice, that their rights as Americans were being stolen from them, ripped away. That made them angry. Angry enough to stop the steal, to fight like hell to stop the steal. And we showed you this. You saw the endless tweets, the rallies, the statements encouraging and spreading that big lie. You saw that he did this over and over again with the same message each time. You must fight to win it back. You must never surrender, no matter what. And remember, each time that his supporters along the way showed violence, he endorsed it, encouraged it, praised it. All part of that same demand to stop the steal and fight like hell. Remember the video that Manager Plaskett showed you from Texas? Some of his supporters encircling a bus of campaign workers on a highway. People easily could have been killed. Easily. What did he do? He tweeted it and made a joke about it at a rally. Called them patriots. Held them out as an example of what it means to stop the steal. When he told his supporters to stop the steal, they took up arms to literally...
Sorry, I can't show the pew-pew sticks, but we can still hear him lie.
You saw the evidence, and so did he. And he welcomed it. And when President Trump attacked Georgia's Secretary of State for certifying the results, his supporters sent death threats. You saw those in great detail from Manager Dean. What did he do? He attacked the election officials further. When his supporters gathered together to have a second Million MAGA rally, that's the rally that Manager Plaskett showed you, a rally about the stolen election, he tweeted that the fight had just begun. What happened next? It's not rocket science. Fights broke out, stabbings, serious violence. Now, President Trump, like all of us, he saw what happened at that rally. He saw all the violence, the burnings, the chaos. How did he respond? He tweeted praise of the event. And then, see it on the screen, he bought $50 million worth of ads.
Of his own money, while these people are spending our money sitting here lying to us.
Same people. He immediately joined forces with that very same group. He joined forces with the same people that had just erupted into violence. Was violence predictable? Was it obvious that the crowd on January 6th was poised for violence? Prepared for it? Absolutely. And this isn't just clear, looking back in time. It was widely recognized at the time. In the days leading up to January 6th, there were dozens, hundreds of warnings. And he knew it. He knew the rally would explode if provoked. He knew all it would take was a slight push. Remember, you heard from Manager Plaskett, the chatter on social media, websites that the Trump administration monitored and were known to the Trump operation. It showed that the people he invited to the January 6th rally took this as a serious call to arms. That this was not just any attack. It was to storm the Capitol if necessary, to stop the steal. And it wasn't just clear on these websites that the Trump administration was monitoring. The FBI issued reports about this as a credible threat, a threat to target us. Law enforcement made 6 arrests that night before. 6 arrests. Newspapers across the city warned of the risk of the violence. There can be no doubt that the risk of violence was foreseeable. And what did he do in the days leading up to the rally? Did he calm the situation? Ask yourself. Did he call for peace? No. He didn't do that. He spread his big lie more. The most dangerous lie, as I mentioned, that Americans' votes were being stolen and that the final act of theft would occur here in the Capitol. And then he assembled all of those supporters. He invited them to an organized event on a specific day, at a specific time, matched perfectly to coincide with the joint session of Congress, to coincide with the steal that he had told them to stop by any and all means. Again, he was told by law enforcement and all over the news that these people were armed and ready for real violence. He knew it. He knew it perfectly well, that he had created this powder keg at his rally. He knew just how combustible that situation was. He knew there were people before him who had prepared, who were armed and armored. He knew they would jump to violence at any signal, at any sign from him that he needed them to fight. that he needed them to stop the steal. And we all know what happened next. Second question. Did he encourage the violence? Standing in that powder keg, did he light a match? Everyone knows the answer to that question. The hours of video you all have watched leave no doubt. Just remember what he said on January 6th.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen. There's never been anything like this. It's a pure theft in American history. Everybody knows it. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country.
At the opening of...
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We must stop the steal. We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. Thank you. And you have to get your people to fight, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
You may remember at the outset of this trial that I told you you'd hear three phrases over and over and over again. The big lie that the election had been stolen, stop the steal and never concede, and fight like hell to stop that steal. You heard those phrases throughout the course of this trial, video after video, statement after statement, telling his supporters that they should be patriots, to fight hard to stop the steal. And on that day, where did he direct the crowd's ire? He directed them here.
Could you imagine if I spoke like that?
To Congress. He quite literally, at one part of that speech, pointed at us. He told them to fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And here's the thing, that wasn't metaphorical. It wasn't rhetorical. He'd already made it perfectly clear that when he said fight, he meant it. And that when followers, in fact, fought, when they engaged in violence, that he'd praise and honor them as patriots. He implied that it was okay to break the law because the election was being stolen. You heard it. You remember the clip that Manager Dean showed you earlier in this trial. He told them, quote is on the screen, when you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. Remember how all of his supporters, some of his supporters across social media were treating this as a war, talking about bringing in the cavalry? Well, President Trump made clear what those different rules were. He'd been making it clear for months.
So, let's have trial by combat.
And Rudy, you did a great job. He's got guts. You know what? He's got guts, unlike a lot of people in the Republican Party. He's got guts. He fights.
His message was crystal clear. And it was understood immediately instantly by his followers. And we don't have to guess. We don't have to guess as to how they reacted. We can look at how people reacted to what he said. You saw them. And you saw the violence. It's pretty simple. He said it, and they did it. And we know this because they told us. They told us in real time during the attack. You saw the affidavits, the interviews on social media, on live TV. They were doing this for him because he asked them to. And it wasn't just insurrectionists who confirmed this. Many, many people, including current and former officials, immediately recognized that the president had incited the crowd, that he alone was capable of stopping the violence, that he did this and he had to call it off because he was the only one who could. Let's see what Representative McCarthy, Representative Gallagher, Chris Christie, Representative Kinzinger, and Representative Katko had to say.
I could not be sadder or more disappointed with the way our country looks at this very moment. People are getting hurt. Anyone involved in this, if you're hearing me, hearing very loud and clear, this is not the American way.
Mr. President, you have got to stop this.
They've already played all this crap.
Who can call this off? Call it off.
Pretty simple.
I think when they go to recess, I'm going to play that clip of Antifa in front of the White House so we can have a good comparison to the clips they keep repetitively showing, and we'll take a real good look at the stuff they're not talking about and they're not addressing.
And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
You know, a guy that knows how to tweet very aggressively on Twitter, you know, puts out one of the weakest statements in one of the saddest days in American history.
The president's role in this insurrection is undeniable, both on social media ahead of January 6th and in his speech that day. He deliberately promoted baseless theories, creating a combustible environment of misinformation and division. To allow the President of the United States to incite this attack without consequences is a direct threat to the future of this democracy.
Did the president encourage violence? Yes. No doubt that he did. Final question. Did the president act willfully in his actions that encouraged violence? Well, let's look at the facts. He stood before an armed, angry crowd known to be ready for violence at his provocation. And what did he do? He provoked them. He aimed them here, told them to fight like hell. And that's exactly what they did. And his conduct throughout the rest of that terrible day really only confirms that he acted willfully. I mean, that he incited the crowd and then engaged in a dereliction of duty while he continued inflaming the violence. And again, we don't have to guess what he thought because he told us. Remember the video he released at 4:17 p.m.? Lead manager Raskin showed that to you yesterday. The one where he said, quote, "We had an election that was stolen from us." Remember the tweet that he put out just a couple hours later, 6:01 p.m. on January 6th. You've seen it many times. You could see it on the slide. That these are the things that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away. That is what he was focused on.
Except the tweet said "with love and peace." He just didn't read it.
Raising the mob that attacked us and our government. You heard Manager Cicilline describe reports The president was delighted, enthusiastic, confused that others didn't share his excitement as he watched the attack unfold on TV. He cared more about pressing his efforts to overturn the election than he did about saving lives, our lives. Look at what President Trump did that day after the rally. It's important. He did virtually nothing. We've seen, Manager Castro mentioned this, that when President Trump wants to stop something, he does so simply, easily, quickly. But aside from 4 tweets and a short clip during the over 5-hour-long attack, he did nothing. On January 6th, he didn't condemn the attack, didn't condemn the attackers, didn't say that he would send help to defend us or defend law enforcement. He didn't react to the violence with shock or horror or dismay as we did. He didn't immediately rush to Twitter and demand in the clearest possible terms that the mob disperse, that they stop it, that they retreat. Instead, he issued messages in the afternoon that sided with them. The insurrectionists who had left police officers battered and bloodied. He reacted exactly the way someone would react if they were delighted, and exactly unlike how a person would react if they were angry at how their followers were acting. Again, ask yourself how many lives would have been saved, how much pain and trauma would have been avoided if he had reacted the way that a president of the United States is supposed to act. There are 2 parts of President Trump's failure here, his dereliction of duty, that I just have to emphasize for a moment. First is what he did to Vice President Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States of America. His own Vice President was in this building with an armed mob shouting, "Hang him." The same armed mob that set up gallows outside. You saw those pictures. And what did President Trump do? He attacked him more. He singled him out by name. It's honestly hard to fathom. Second, our law enforcement. The brave officers who were sacrificing their lives to defend us, who could not evacuate or seek cover because they were protecting us. I'm not going to go through again what my fellow managers showed you yesterday, but let me just say this. Those officers serve us faithfully and dutifully, and they follow their oaths. They deserved a president who upholds his, who would not risk their lives and safety to retain power. A president who would preserve, protect, and defend them. But that's not what he did. When they, the police, still barricaded and being attacked with poles, he said in his video to the people attacking them, "We love you. You're very special." What more could we possibly need to know about President Trump's state of mind? Senators, the evidence is clear. We showed you statements, videos, affidavits that prove President Trump incited an insurrection that he alone had the power to stop. And the fact that he didn't stop it, the fact that he incited a lawless attack and abdicated his duty to defend us from it, the fact that he actually further inflamed the mob, attacking his vice president while assassins were pursuing him in this Capitol. More
They're assassins now.
conviction and disqualification. We humbly ask you to convict President Trump for the crime for which he is overwhelmingly guilty of. Because if you don't, if we pretend this didn't happen, or worse, if we let it go unanswered, who's to say it won't happen again?
If they go to recess, I'm going to play this video from in front of the White House. I think it was back in July.
Members of the Senate, first of all, thank you for your close attention and seriousness of purpose that you've demonstrated over the last few days. Thank you also for your courtesy to the House managers as we've come over here, strangers in a strange land, to make our case before this distinguished and august body. We are about to close, and I am proud that our managers have been so disciplined and so focused. I think we are closing somewhere between 5 and 6 hours under the time that you have allotted to us. But we think we have been able to tell you everything we need to say. We will obviously have the opportunity to address your questions and then to do.
This guy kind of looks like Kramer, doesn't he? From Seinfeld.
And again, I'm not going to re-traumatize you by going through the evidence. Once again, I just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts to consider as you enter upon this very high and difficult duty that you have to render impartial justice in this case, as you have all sworn to do. And I wanted to start simply by saying that in the history of humanity, democracy is an extremely rare and fragile and precarious and transitory thing. Abraham Lincoln knew that when he spoke from the battlefield and vowed that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. But he was speaking not long after the republic was created, and he was trying to prove that point, that we would not allow it to perish from the earth. For most of history, the norm has been dictators, autocrats, bullies, despots, tyrants, cowards who take over our governments. For most of the history of the world. And that's why America is such a miracle. We were founded on the extraordinary principles of the inalienable rights of the people and the consent of the governed and the fundamental equality of all of us. You know, when Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and he hearkened back to the Declaration of Independence when he said 7 years ago, he knew that that wasn't how we started. We started imperfectly. We started as a slave republic. Lincoln knew that. But he was struggling to make the country better. And however flawed the founders were as men in their times, they inscribed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution all the beautiful principles that we needed to open America up to successive waves of political struggle and constitutional change and transformation in the country. So we really would become something much more like Lincoln's beautiful vision of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, the world's greatest multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic constitutional democracy, the envy of the world. As Tom Paine said, an asylum for humanity. where people would come. Think about the preamble. Those first three words, pregnant with such meaning, we the people. And then all of the purposes of our government put into that one action-packed sentence. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and preserve to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty. And then, right after that first sentence, the mission statement for America and the Constitution, what happens? Article 1. The Congress is created. All legislative powers herein are reserved to the Congress of the United States. You see what just happened? The sovereign power of the people to launch the country and create the Constitution flowed right into Congress. And then you get, in Article 1, Section 8, comprehensive, vast powers that all of you know so well. The power to regulate commerce domestically, internationally. The power to declare war. The power to raise budgets and taxes and to spend money. The power to govern the seat of government, and on and on and on. And then even in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, and all other powers necessary and proper to the execution of the foregoing powers. That's all of us. And then you get to Article 2, the President. 4 short paragraphs. And the 4th paragraph is all about what? Impeachment. How you get rid of a president who commits high crimes and misdemeanors. But what's the core job of the president? To take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And our framers were so fearful of presidents becoming tyrants and wanting to become kings and despots that they put the oath of office right into the Constitution. They inscribed it into the Constitution to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. We've got the power to impeach the president. The president doesn't have the power to impeach us. Think about that. The popular branch of government has the power to impeach the president. The president does not have the power to impeach us. And as I said before, all of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. And the way the framers would have it is the moment that we no longer acted as servants of the people, but as masters of the people, as violators of the people's rights, that was the time to impeach, remove, convict, disqualify, start all over again. Because the interests of the people are so much greater than the interests of one person. Any one person, even the greatest person in the country. The interests of the people are what count. Now, when we sit down and we close, our distinguished counterparts, the defense counsel, who have waited very patiently, and thank you, will stand up and seek to defend the president's conduct on the facts, which I think they will. It has already been decided by the Senate on Tuesday that the Senate has constitutional jurisdiction over this impeachment case brought to you by the United States House of Representatives. So we've put that jurisdictional constitutional issue to bed. It is over. It's already been voted on. This is a trial on the facts of what happened. An incitement, as we said, is a fact-intensive investigation and judgment that each of you will have to make. We've made our very best effort to set forth every single relevant fact that we know in the most objective and honest light. We trust and we hope that the defense will understand the constitutional gravity and solemnity of this trial by focusing like a laser beam on the facts and not return to the constitutional argument that's already been decided by the Senate. Just as a defense lawyer who loses a motion to dismiss on a constitutional basis in a criminal case must let that go and then focus on the facts which are being presented by the prosecutors in detail, they must let this constitutional jurisdictional argument go. Not just because it's frivolous and wrong, as nearly every expert scholar in America opined, but because it's not relevant to the jury's consideration of the facts of the case. So our friends must work to answer all of the overwhelming, detailed, specific, factual, and documentary evidence we have introduced of the president's clear and overwhelming guilt in inciting violent insurrection against the Union. Now, Donald Trump last week turned down our invitation to come testify about his actions, and therefore we've not been able to ask him any questions directly as of this point. Therefore, during the course of their 16-hour allotted presentation, we would pose these preliminary questions to his lawyers, which I think are on everyone's minds right now, in which we would have asked Mr. Trump himself if he had chosen to come and testify about his actions and inactions when we invited him last week. One, why did President Trump not tell his supporters to stop the attack on the Capitol as soon as he learned of it? Why did President Trump do nothing to stop the attack for at least 2 hours after the attack began?
Isn't that the same question?
As our constitutional commander-in-chief, why did he do nothing to send help to our overwhelmed and besieged law enforcement officers for at least 2 hours on January 16th after the attack began? On January 6th, why did President Trump not at any point that day condemn the violent insurrection and the insurrectionists? And I'll add a legal question that I hope his distinguished counsel will address. If a president did invite a violent insurrection against our government, as of course we allege and think we've proven in this case, but just in general, if a president incited a violent insurrection against our government, would that be a high crime and misdemeanor? Can we all agree at least on that? Senators, I've talked a lot about common sense in this trial because I believe that's all you need to arrive at the right answer here. You know, when Tom Paine wrote Common Sense, the pamphlet that launched the American Revolution, he said that common sense really meant two different things. One, common sense is the understanding that we all have without advanced learning and education. Common sense is the sense accessible to everybody, but common sense is also the sense that we all have in common as a community. Senators, America, we need to exercise our common sense about what happened. Let's not get caught up in a lot of outlandish lawyers' theories here.
Don't worry, we're not.
About what just took place in our country. Tom Paine wasn't an American, as you know, but he came over to help us in our great revolutionary struggle against the kings and queens and the tyrants. And in 1776, in the crisis, he wrote these beautiful words. It was a very tough time for the country. People didn't know which way things were going to go. Were we going to win? Against all hope? Because for most of the rest of human history, it had been the kings and the queens and the tyrants and the nobles lording it over the common people. Could political self-government work in America was the question. And Paine wrote this pamphlet called The Crisis, and in it he said these beautiful words. And with your permission, I'm going to update the language a little bit, pursuant to a suggestion of Speaker Pelosi, so as not to offend modern sensibilities, okay? But he said, these are the times that try men and women's souls. These are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone who stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Good luck in your deliberations.
Thank goodness he went to sit down. No, don't come back.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I have two, we're going to do the adjournment resolution in a moment. I have two other things that we have to do. They're quick. First, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that it be in order to make several unanimous consent requests as if in legislative session.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent that on Friday, February 12th, from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m., that notwithstanding adjournment, the Senate be able to receive House messages and executive matters, committees be authorized to report legislative and executive matters, and senators be allowed to submit statements for the record, introduce bills and resolutions, and make co-sponsor requests, and where applicable, the Secretary of the Senate, on behalf of the presiding officer, be permitted to refer such matters.
Without objection, so ordered.
And a second request, poignantly appropriate at this moment. I ask unanimous consent that pursuant to the order of the Senate of January 24th, 1901, the traditional reading of Washington's farewell address take place on Monday, February 22nd, following the prayer and pledge. Further, that Senator Portman be recognized to deliver the address.
Is there objection? Not hearing an objection, it's ordered.
And finally, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the trial adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow, Friday, February 12th, and this also constitute the adjournment of the Senate.
Hearing an objection, without objection, so ordered. Senate's adjourned.
All right, so it sounds like they cut it short for the day. I mean, it's hard to tell with that guy, you know, the big bullfrog mumbling through his mask. Just a moment. Okay, first we're going to do a bunch of shout outs. Thank you so much, Jen, Carol, Hippie Mermaid, Holly, Bobby, Darkstar, Debbie, Morris, Jen again, and Dumb Blonde for all the donations and all the support. I really appreciate you guys. And let's see. And thank you so much, Tyson and Red Roads, for joining the membership program. And welcome to the family. You're officially hooligans. All right, hooligans. So I don't have it in full screen because I want you guys to see right here. Oh, yeah, you can't see my mouse. On the left side of the screen, about the center, you can see this is from my channel. Good luck trying to find this video. I have the link posted in the community tab, but if you're not on a computer, you can't even go back far enough to see this video. I have over 600 videos of live streams, and you're only able to go back to see like 300 of them. I don't know why that is. There's nothing I can do about it. Potentially, if you're on a computer, you might be able to dig farther, but if you're on a phone, the list will stop at 300. But this was streamed live. This was restreamed live. May 31st. So this is back in May that this happened. Okay, so I just want you guys to see that. You know, that's where this video is from. As you can see, there's not even 5,000 views. You guys didn't even know who I was back then. I'm not on the screen. I don't have no border stuff. I was young. I was I was just a baby getting into this. But I want you guys to see what happened in front of the White House in comparison to all the crap they're showing us now. So we're going to play the clip here. I want you guys to see how this went.
What happens when the police line and the crowd clash? I've been driving for like 8 hours today. I'm kind of tired, but I couldn't pass it up. So.
This guy is like totally in shock through this whole video. And this is Antifa or BLM or whatever, by the way. This is not people claiming to be patriots.
There has been some movement on the police line behind us. I can't really tell what they're doing. I thought there was going to be a big boom. I'm not sure what the cops over by the White House are doing. There's been some movement. They've been shifting their positions. They haven't seemed to be advancing towards us though, so let's see.
Now this kind of stuff was going on for days. Right in front of the White House. This is right in front of the White House.
And things like that inside. I don't feel like feeling the shrapnel, but
See, and they don't talk about this at all, like this never happened. And you'll see when this guy starts walking around and stuff, there's a National Guard, either DC police or Secret Service. You'll see.
this crowd is crazy. They just threw a tree in that fire. It didn't look like a marijuana tree, but it sure smells like it.
A marijuana tree. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's hilarious. I didn't catch that when I was live streaming this. So what you see in the background where those lights and stuff are, where it's all dark, that's where the police line is. As you can see in the yellow building there, the flashing inside, the smoke from this fire is setting off the fire alarms inside. And for a while, they potentially thought there was a fire inside the building. I don't think there was. I don't think it was determined that there was a fire lit inside the building.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Look at that fire. This is on the White House grounds. You can't even go to this location now.
They let that, there's a house on fire, and the cops are firing something rather in our direction. Not quite sure what they're firing, but those cops, I can't see if you can, I'm not sure if you can tell, there's a house, okay. So they lit a house on fire, or some building. It wasn't the White House, but some big building across from it. There was the building that they were sitting on when they were launching fires off that I was telling you about, fire rockets towards the cops. And
See, look at all these people.
Oh no. Anyways, as soon as they lit that house.
This is not live. This is from May 30th or 31st or something. This is just a comparison to see what was happening, what has been happening, but they don't talk about it. They just act like what happened at the Capitol is the only time there's been craziness in Washington. This is right in front of the White House. This has been seen before. I stream this live. That's where I'm playing it from. You guys just didn't know me back then.
We're all watching the fire, and there were a couple of pops. There's been pops all night, though. It's basically CS, gas, or it's firecrackers, something along those lines.
Here, I'll get the link so I can share it with you guys, and you guys can share it to others, because people obviously don't know that this happened. This was happening for days.
They probably put the fire out. But once that place went up, the officers on the police line, they started firing off some sort of projectile. There's another one.
Look at the statue here. This is in the front lawn of the White House. The statue has spray paint all over it saying F Trump and a bunch of other stuff. I don't think they had the ACAB yet. They weren't saying that kind of stuff yet.
Hey, I appreciate y'all's concern, but if you would maybe not call me right now, only because I'm trying not to lose the connection. And I'm live on my phone. Hold up. If you look behind, the police line is advanced all the way up to the front where the barriers are. Might still be hard to see from where you're at, or from this angle. There's the fire. This is the fire they started probably a half hour or so ago. And it's, it built up. They just, everyone left here. They're throwing scooters in there. I'm gonna get out of the way because I feel like I'm in the line of fire. There's the police line. They're, can't turn the phone around. You can tell they're actually taking down a looks like a stop sign, stoplight. What is that?
They're right near the church. This is right before they turn that area into BLM Plaza. But as you can see, there's no 10-foot black gates yet because this is what made them put those gates up, is these events. These are BLM people. They've been outside protesting and doing stuff like this. At this point, it had only been like a week or so. They were showing up every day. It was like 24 hours a day that this was going on.
Hey, come on. Our street! Our street!
Does that chant sound familiar?
Our street! Our street! Our street!
There's a BLM sign.
Our street! Our street!
See, as you can see, the statue's all spray painted. It's got people hanging off of it.
You can't tell from here, but the officers, a lot of them are rushing. I can't tell Looks like they're repositioning themselves to address the crowd over this way here. They did just take down a stoplight. They just took down a signal light. And I think the officers are probably coming in this direction to control the crowd.
See, how come the Senate's not talking about this stuff?
So for those of you who are just tuning in, outside the White House, Antifa's here, Black Lives Matter is here. A lot of people are here, probably thousands. They were outside the barriers on Pennsylvania Avenue on the north side of the White House. And it was pretty peaceful. It was loud and there was chants, but that was about it. And then they started fires. They started one fire right there in the middle of the street, and then they started one, you can see it towards the middle of my screen. That's actually a building that they lit on fire. And as soon as they lit that on fire, the officers started firing CS gas and whatnot, different non-lethal projectiles into the crowd. There's been a lot of pops tonight, mainly CS gas, mainly firecrackers, bottle rocket, little makeshift bombs that people have been making. So it's been a lot of fun. The thing about being in a large crowd with a lot of people with iPhones is people start airdropping you pictures by accident. So I've had to decline a lot of accidental airdrops, but there's a police line. You can see the police line right there. Okay. I think the police are probably about to start intervening.
There's about another 20 minutes left of this video.
See, my sister Amy, if you're watching this right now, you are the beneficiary to my 401k, so but don't start planning anything just yet. Oh. Oh, tear gas. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Tear gas. Tear gas is not fun. It never gets fun. But it's what it is, right? Woo! Hold on. Not sure why they chose tonight. I know President Trump did tweet earlier today that that was a big one. President Trump did tweet earlier today that the U.S. is going to declare Antifa to be considered a terrorist group. When a group is considered a terrorist group, it's not just a declaration, but it is a formal declaration, which means funding can go to seeking them out. It also can criminalize Americans who are supporting them. I just got wet with something. I'm not sure what it was. I'm going to turn the phone around. There's a couple police cars and people are throwing stuff at it.
Fuck to them. Fuck the police all day, every day.
You say 12?
One time. The police. Fuck the police.
Oh yeah, I have tons of footage, Sage Pup. We got them taking over the police station in Seattle. Footage from Chop or Chaz. Well, both. All that. I'm just showing this because this has been going on since May. But they don't talk about this. All everybody wants to talk about is what happened at the Capitol that one day. This kind of stuff still happens. It's just not as often right now because it's winter time.
By the police line or by gas.
And here comes the police. You can see them in the background.
All right, there's the police line.
See, they don't even use this chant anymore.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
All right, so what we're seeing is the police line there. It looks like they just took someone into custody. Typically what they do on the riot line like that, there'll be the line of police, they'll snatch one up, they'll pull them back, and the line will close that gap just to maintain the integrity of the police line. So we did see a little bit of that there, a little bit of that.
See, this is what the protesters used to look like. See, they don't have no body gear on, no riot gear, no gas masks. This is what they used to look like when it all started. Well, when it started this round.
A lot of CS gas tonight.
That's why I always tell you guys, you know, dig into my archive, go to my channel, dig in the videos, find this footage and get it out there. Let people see the truth. I've been watching the protests evolve since May. Everybody should see it. You know, back when I live streamed this, I couldn't get 20 people in the chat. Like, these videos need to go out. People need to see, you know, what really goes on. That's why I still try and go live as much as I can, but you know, it's not as active now that it's wintertime. I'm sure as soon as it's summer, we're going to see more stuff like this. But until then, you guys got, you know, you should really dig into the videos. If you can, go on a computer so you can see all 600 or almost 700 videos that I've live streamed of stuff just like this. On a phone, you're only going to be able to go back about 300 videos. I think it's like August. I don't even think you can see July. But if you're on a computer, you should be able to dig far enough back and get these links and share them out to people. Don't do it on Facebook. They'll just censor you on Facebook. But anywhere else you can get it, text it to your friends. I mean, anybody you know, put it on Reddit, you know, however. But a lot of people don't even know that this stuff happened. They're just talking about what happened at the Capitol. This is literally the front lawn of the White House.
Now the police just broke the barriers so they can come out to the street if they need to. And now we got a bunch of
Yeah, JP, back when I used to stream this stuff, I wasn't on camera. I didn't have the microphone set up. I used to just be in the live chat, and I don't even know if the live chat was recorded in these videos. But you can see it's on my channel. I was restreaming it. I didn't know as much as I do now. It's not as well prepared as things are now. But the footage is there. I mean, this is all done live. There's a lot of people who have no idea that this even happened, because if you weren't looking for the live streamers, no one knew that this was going on. This was not on the news. This was not being broadcasted. Just people like me were restreaming it. And back then it was like me, a couple other people, and Woke, and that was it. No one else was restreaming it. Nobody else was even restreaming, period. It wasn't a thing back when this was going on.
Am I still here? Hey, somebody comment if you can still see me, or if you can still.
There's about another 10 minutes left in this video.
Hey. Hey, someone comment if you can still see. I'm not sure if I'm still live or not. If the picture is sideways, are we good? Okay, cool. Well,
they're trying to drop me off. I think YouTube's shutting me down.
Man, everyone ran. I thought I was going to get trampled. Felt like Mufasa. Oh, Too soon? Too soon. Too soon. Man, that was nuts. Well,
Brianna, it's not me. It's not about Wi-Fi. I'm running a computer here. Like, of course, I'm cabled into the internet. It's not me. It's YouTube. They don't like what I'm showing. So, I mean, we've been shadow banned for 40 minutes or something now.
to run after the crowd. It ended up, I think, just being a show of force because they didn't actually, they didn't really advance. But everyone else ran, and I didn't want to get trampled by anyone. So there you go. Oh man. All right. Well, hey guys, I'm probably gonna go now. I don't know if you can see me, but that was fun. I'm not sure if it's gonna get any crazier. It might, but I'm tired and I want to go to bed. So, bye.
Yeah, I know. CommieTube is messing with me. They don't want people knowing about this stuff. It doesn't go with their narrative. It doesn't go with what's going on right now. Like, you know, like I keep saying, the Senate's not talking about this. There's tons of people that have no idea. They just want to talk about what happened at the Capitol, as if that was the first time Washington had seen, you know, a gathering of people that were severely unhappy. But look at all these people. This is right in front of the White House.
Somebody comment if the camera's facing the right way.
The camera guy's a little new. He's a little new.
Hey, somebody comment.
All right, so just a moment. So yeah, let me see if you guys can even see me. Yeah, I'm not getting no flashing warnings or nothing. Just a moment. Yeah, they don't want you to see this kind of stuff. They don't want you guys to know that this stuff was happening. You know, as it said in the bottom of the video, that's from May. This kind of stuff has been going on since May, but they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it at all. They act like this stuff never happened. That kind of stuff from the live stream I showed back in May, that was going on a daily basis. A lot of that stuff was 24 hours a day. I mean, back then I was really considering going 24 hours a day. Just being live and bringing on other people. We were fighting really hard to get monetized so we would be able to run 24 hours a day. Me and a friend of mine were trying to really make that happen, but by the time I got monetized, everything had calmed down and was only happening at nighttime, and as it got colder, it was happening less and less. But I'm sure as soon as it gets warm out, we're going to see more of that. I mean, why wouldn't we? They're not talking about those protests. They're not talking about BLM and Antifa doing that kind of stuff. You know, and a lot of people try and give me hate. Oh, it's not BLM, it's not Antifa. Nobody was calling those people Antifa back then. Those were strictly BLM people. It said BLM on their shirt. Their signs were BLM. They were telling you to go to the BLM website and donate and all this stuff. People can say whatever they want to, but I've been doing this on a daily basis for almost a year now. It's really hard to convince me otherwise when I've been watching these people evolve. And I don't mean these people as in this group. I mean, some of these people are literally the exact human beings I've been watching evolve over time. Like, I don't want to say them by name, but I know them by name. I mean, a lot of these people have evolved. as this has gone on and have become violent and stuff. And yeah, it started with hands up, don't shoot, wearing t-shirts and stuff, and now they're wearing riot gear, showing up in gas masks. You know, they're still burning stuff down. That still happens. They're still blowing out windows of stores and stuff. I mean, they were admitting to it on the last live stream we showed in Portland. They were like, yeah, we blow windows out and stuff, but, you know, we're upset, and the store owners understand. So, you know, they know it sucks that we're blowing out their store windows, but they support what we're doing. Like, that makes any kind of sense. It makes no sense. And you know, if you guys, obviously you guys are hungry for the truth, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But if you really want to help, I mean, you know, not that, you know, your donations, your support and all of that stuff don't help. It definitely helps. I mean, it's what's keeping the channel moving. But if you want to become even more active in a peaceful way, in a productive way, dig into the archive. Go down my list of videos. Go all the way back to the beginning of the live streams and share those videos. Raise awareness to what's actually going on, because obviously the news isn't going to talk about it. You know, I always tell everybody, you know, keep your ears and eyes open, be patient, be calm, learn, find information, verify that it's true. Don't do any more than that. Anything else other than that is just hurting people. You know, the reaction that comes from that just hurts people. You know, just like what happened at the Capitol, the reaction of that is if you wear bars and stars, you're out there with an American flag, they just assume you're a pro-Trumper. They've demonized the American flag, and that's wrong. But that's what happens when you're using your bronze and not your brain. They want you to be destructive and stuff like that. And that's why I'm always telling people, don't do that. You know, don't do that. Don't take what I say and twist it around and act like I want you guys to do anything. I want you guys to keep your ears and eyes open. I want you to learn stuff. I want you to find information and verify that it's true. If you want to do any more than that, dig in the archive. Scroll for 2 hours to find the beginning of these live streams, and then share them. Make sure people see what has been going on for almost a year now. These riots, these peaceful protests, all that kind of stuff. Raise awareness to that. Let people know what's really going on, because everybody's walking around talking about Trumpers and this, that, and the other, and that stuff is minute in comparison to what goes on a daily basis. I mean, from the notifications I've got on my phone just today, they're out there marching in Portland right now. The same people who behave like what we just seen, burning and being violent and acting crazy while playing victim, they're out there marching right now. But they don't want to put no spotlight on it. You want to be proactive, you want to do something that's peaceful and constructive, get those live streams out there. Show people what's been going on. Because it's crazy. It's crazy that they put all that spotlight on that one day at the Capitol, but they don't talk about the 2 weeks of burning stuff in front of the White House, of needing to call in National Guard because of what's going on at the White House, of having to put up 10-foot fences and spotlights in the front yard of the White House because of that. They forfeited that plaza right in front of the White House because of what we just watched. That's why it says BLM. That's why it's painted on the street right there. Because they forfeited that area. Every time those MAGA Million marches happened or whatever, and they would show Antifa fighting with the police, it's right there. It's that plaza right there. That's where the police protect them at, is right in that location. It's crazy, because there's tons of people that have no idea that all this stuff is going on, because they're too busy believing what, you know, the mainstream is telling them or what Facebook is telling them. Not enough people seen this stuff. I didn't have a big enough reach back when this all started. Like I said, I'd be lucky to have 20 people in the chat back when I used to show that stuff. And it's not about the size of the following. It's not about like getting the channel up there or nothing like that. It's about showing people the truth. It's hard to show people the truth if people don't know you exist. So please dig in the archive. Watch the videos, share the videos. Not all of them are like that. Some of them are peaceful protests where people are just chanting and they're not, you know, burning stuff down. But there is tons of footage where they are They are being super violent. They are burning stuff down. They are blowing out windows. They are hurting officers, and not even just officers, just bystanders. If you weren't with the movement and you're standing there with a camera, they would attack you. If you drove down the street, they would open your car door or try and blow out your windows to pull you out of the car and attack you. I mean, they have killed people. They have hurt people. They have done lots of crazy stuff and been very violent. And this has been going on for months, almost a year. And they want to throw that under the rug and just focus on what happened at the Capitol. Not that I'm condoning anything that did happen at the Capitol, but the point is why are they putting so much spotlight on it, acting like this is the only thing that's gone on in the last year? And they don't talk about any of that stuff. They don't talk about any of the rioting, any of the BLM stuff. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Go into those Antifa chats and watch what those people say. They totally believe in that stuff, and they ignore everything that's been going on for a year. And if anything, they try and say, oh, well, that's Antifa. Like it's not the same exact people out there doing that stuff. Like it's just someone else. It's just someone else out there. It's dumb, and it's lies. Everything they say is not true. I've watched it live. Many of you have been with me since the beginning and have watched it live, but not everyone. Not enough people have seen that stuff. It's crazy. Share it. Open people's eyes. People ask me all the time, how do we get people to see the truth? Show them the truth. That's how. And if they want to stick their head in the sand, then let them be. You can't force someone to believe something. You can't force someone to change their mind. But you can show them the truth, and they can take it or leave it. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So anyways, I just really wanted to show you guys that, since they want to show the same couple clips of what happened at the Capitol over and over again, let's see the other side of things. So that was how I felt was a good way to do it. So let's get these shout outs in, and we'll wrap this up, and we'll move on to other things. Thank you so much, Political Trance, Sean, Seawhale, and Jeff, for your donations and all your support. And thank you so much, Jeff M., for joining the membership program, and welcome to the family. You're officially a hooligan. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone for all your donations, joining the membership program, or purchasing any merch. Oh yeah, let me show you guys that real quick. My merch came while we were live. Just a second, I want to show you guys the merch I got. So I got the Hooligan H t-shirt. It's got the big H on the front and the Jeff Mac logo on the back of it. And then I also got the zip up hoodie. Same deal. It's got the Hooligan H on the left side, Jeff Mac logo on the back. I also got the tapestry. I'm not sure which size I got, but it's almost, I mean, it's heavy duty. It's good quality. It's almost the size of a queen size blanket. It's huge. When I move the studio around, I'll have that in the background. Yeah, check out the merch store. They got lots of cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff. I mean, I designed it, but obviously I'm not printing it and doing all that stuff. So I purchased lots of stuff from there. It's not like I get it for free or nothing like that. I got to pay just like you guys got to pay. But I definitely dig everything from there. So you should definitely check it out. The link's in the description. When I end lives, I always post all the links. I spam the chat with all my links. So if you would stick around and check out all those links, I would really appreciate it. It's not just for merch and stuff like that. There's also links for like YouTube and Twitter, or not YouTube, but Instagram, Twitter, my website, stuff like that. The Discord keeps us all connected. It's important that we stay connected, because if YouTube wants to do stuff like they're doing today, trying to shut me down, one day they may delete me. And then what? Your connection to what I provide is just lost? No, There's other ways to live stream and stuff. I just live stream on YouTube because that's where everyone is. And it's that way because YouTube comes on every phone sold in America by default. That's why everyone's on YouTube. If I'm going to show the truth, I have to go to where the people are. That's why I jump through all these stupid hoops to make sure I can stay here on YouTube so I can show the truth to everyone. But you guys should stay connected on as many platforms as possible. So if they do try and do something funny and get rid of me, we will go live somewhere else. Shout out to everyone on D Live that's watching right now. You know, we're going to keep moving forward no matter how this goes. So stay connected. That way we will, you know, be able to capture the truth wherever we have to go to do it. So yeah, stay, you know, after the live, I fill the chat with all the links. The links are always in the description. I think I'm going to make a video because not everyone understands. When you're on the live chat, on a computer, it's easier to see, but on a phone, you have to actually exit out of the live chat in order to open up the description. And I think not enough people understand that. People are always asking me for links and stuff that are literally right underneath the live chat. I didn't want to have to make a video, but I think I'm going to have to because not enough people understand. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for being here. If you're new, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and join the Discord. The Discord is a free app that you download on your phone. You come to any of my live videos, even if they're not live anymore. In the description, there's a link that takes you to my server. Go through the steps. You'll be greeted with an automated message letting you know that you've done all you need to do in order to be notified every single time we go live, when and where we go live. I provide the link, so all you gotta do is click it and you will be where we all are. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. If you're feeling eager to do it, dig in the archive, preferably on a computer, so you can reach all the way to the back of the videos, because we're almost at 700 live streams, and get that stuff out there. You know, show people the truth, and don't be an ass about it. Just show them, you know, hey, this is what goes on that you may not have seen. People receive information a lot better when you're not shoving it down their throat. I know that we feel lots of ways. I see it in the chat. People feel upset. You know, they feel strongly. Everyone feels strongly about what's going on. So if that sounds like you, dig into the archive, go to my channel, dig in all the videos, get that stuff out there, share it. Show caution on Facebook, because they will censor you for sharing these videos. I can't share it on my Facebook. They shut everything down. I barely even use my Facebook because of it. But you could always text it. You could put it in Reddit if you know how to do that stuff. I don't know anything about chat forums, but I'm sure you could share it there. Whatever. Get the truth out there. That's what I'm trying to do. Thank you guys so much for being here and being hungry for the truth. So we'll see what else is going on. Like I said, I think Portland is marching right now. I'd like to get some food or something before I go live again. But we will cover anything else that's going on today. And it sounds like we will be back at the impeachment trial tomorrow. So regardless of how today goes, we will be back tomorrow to definitely hear how the defense is going to respond to all these factual allegations that they have going on. Bunch of idiots have been talking. Hopefully we don't have to see the guy with bad hair. I don't know how you make all that money and have bad hair. Just wow. I mean, his whole appearance screams alcoholism and drug abuse. That's my opinion. Anyways, thank you guys so much. Until next time, stand tall, shine bright. That's a wrap.